Urahara and Shunsui are running. Urahara says, "It's him we're talking about, so he will probably be fine." Shunsui replies, "You're right, but the bigger issue we have are those Reiatsu tremors I'm sensing. They're moving further and further away, and the Reiatsu surrounding them is starting to weaken." Urahara questions, "Have all the vice captains been defeated?" Renji answers, "Rukia and I are still good to go, along with Hinamori." Shunsui confirms, "Nanao is still with us." Shinji adds, "We don't even know where the enemy is aiming from or who they're targeting. But if we slow down, we're playing right into the enemy's hands." Then we see Lille Barrow aiming his gun. He says, "It's terrifying, isn't it? Having no idea where I am aiming from, as your comrades fall one by one. In such a situation, it's only natural to be overwhelmed with terror." As Shunsui runs, he says, "We've got to do something. We've made countless sacrifices and still have no idea who our enemy is or where they are." Lille says, "But if there were a person devoid of those fears in their group." Suddenly Shunsui stops, draws his sword, and protects Nanao. He says, "For our next move, someone's going to have to take the risk of becoming a human shield if we have any hope of turning the situation in our favor." Lille Barrow responds, "Then that person is either a lunatic or an idiot, or maybe both. Who would just stand and offer such a perfect opening?" Shinji shouts, "You fool! I told you if you make a move, you'll be playing right into their hands." Lille aims and shoots at Shunsui. Shunsui takes the first hit, and the bullet strikes him squarely in the chest. He falls. Lille says, "No matter the level of discipline or how perfectly regimented a group may be, all it takes is one idiot's actions to bring about their downfall. I've seen countless groups like this before. To think I actually held you Shinigami to a higher standard." Suddenly, Lille realizes Shunsui is no longer in his original position. To his surprise, Shunsui is standing behind him. Shunsui swiftly attacks with his sword, slicing Lille's gun into pieces. "That was an impressive dodge," Shunsui says. "You're pretty fast. I've taken out your weapon. Next will be your life." Lille thinks, "What's going on? From such a great distance, there's no way I gave myself away. How did he manage to get behind me so fast?" Shunsui, meanwhile, remains calm and says, "Don't tell me you've never played Daruma Fell Over." He refers to a particular children's game. Lille is confused and says, "What the hell fell over?" Meanwhile, Shunsui notices Nanao watching from behind. Shunsui tells her to leave, saying, "This one's going to be tough, so you'd ease my mind if you rejoin the others." Nanao refuses, and Shunsui orders her, "In that case, go inform the others that you'll be heading ahead of them." Nanao reluctantly agrees, saying, "All right, I'll relay the message and be back soon." Before leaving, she adds, "Captain, if you die before I get back, I'll shave all the chest hair off your lifeless corpse." Shunsui replies with a grin, "That's fine. It's one of my defining traits." Lille interrupts, "Are we done chatting?" Shunsui responds, "Don't be rude." Lille continues, "We've gathered intel on all of you from your previous battles. Your power allows you to turn children's games into reality. That's what you showed me just now, right?" Shunsui answers, "So, you managed to gather all the way to the happenings at the Spirit King's palace. Quite well informed, aren't you? But it makes sense. A Quincy would have never played Daruma Fell Over." He begins to explain the game, and Lille listens carefully, understanding. Lille says, "I see, but most of the rules seem to work conveniently in your favor. But if you're seen moving, you lose, right? That means if I see through the illusion at any moment, you'll die." Shunsui praises him. "Well done. I'm glad you're quick on the uptake. It saves me the trouble." Lille retorts, "Explaining the rules to me was a mistake, wasn't it? Now you can't use this game anymore." Shunsui calmly replies, "Not at all. It's only when both of us know the rules that we can truly call it a game. Wouldn't you agree?" Lille is taken aback by Shunsui's confidence. Shunsui clarifies, "I hate to nitpick, but there's one thing you misunderstood. The version of me you saw earlier, not moving, that wasn't an illusion. You were actually seeing the real me, in all my glory." Lille is shocked. "That was the real you?" Shunsui explains how he pulled it off, and Lille is left stunned. "Cut the crap! There's no way I'd mistake that for you." Shunsui smiles and says, "Oh, but you would. You'd do well to remember who you're talking to." I am the commander of the Gotei 13, Kyoraku Shunsui. We've put a lot of effort into making this video, yet many of you still haven't subscribed. So please consider subscribing to support our work. It would mean a lot. Thanks. Now back to the video. Lille is stunned, realizing he's fighting the head captain of all the commanders. As Lille thinks this through, Shunsui seizes the opportunity and instantly attacks. Lille counters by firing his gun at Shunsui, but to his surprise, Shunsui is already behind him. Lille doesn't stop there, though. He quickly dodges and aims directly at Shunsui's heart. "It's over. I told you can't use the game anymore," Lille declares, launching a direct attack. But to his surprise, Shunsui had already initiated his own attack. A sword rises from the ground and strikes toward Lille. However, Lille is quick and dodges at the last moment, counterattacking immediately. Shunsui says, "Now that's what I call a reaction. You're the first to dodge my attack on the first strike." Shunsui smiles and says, "That's what it means to be the captain commander." We see Lille aiming his gun at Shunsui's chest and saying, "That was rather reckless. Did you assume being in close quarters would give you a sword advantage?" Shunsui replies, "I did. I mean, you've already been cut, haven't you?" Lille is surprised by Shunsui's words, and in the next moment, realizes that his sword has been sliced in two. Shunsui continues, "My intent was to sever your entire arm, but I guess I was a bit too merciful when push came to shove." Lille quickly retreats and regains his composure, drawing another gun. He declares, "This gun is my bow, created from my shrift, the X-axis." Shunsui remarks, "I see. So no matter how many times I slice or break it, you'll just create another and keep fighting. But aren't you forgetting the rules?" In an instant, Shunsui is behind Lille, launching a slicing attack with his sword. Lille barely dodges. Shunsui adds, "If you take your eyes off me for even a moment, if your gaze happens to catch just a glimpse of my shadow, everything you see afterward might just be my silhouette. Do you remember back when you were a kid, how sometimes your own shadow would scare the living daylights out of you?" Lille is stunned, and the next moment, Shunsui stabs him from behind. Furious, Lille says, "Now you've done it. That's the third time." Shunsui is shocked, and Lille reveals, "Only when both my eyes are open can I use the true essence of the X-axis. In other words, my bullets will pass through your body, and your sword will pass right through me." Shunsui responds, "I see, so when both your eyes are open, all bets are off." Lille nods. "Correct. At this moment, within this world, no weapon can kill me. When I'm in danger during battle, I can open both my eyes. While both are open, even the worst criminals and cheaters are at my mercy." Shunsui jokes, "Ah, if that's the case, maybe you should hurry up and close them then." Lille continues, "But once I've opened my third eye in battle, I can finish the fight with my eyes open. I am the final Quincy, granted power by His Majesty. His Majesty is far more than a mere man. He's a godlike being. And for such a creation to have his eye opened after being vulnerable, even for a brief moment, is something that should never be allowed to happen." With this, we see Lille's eyes begin to glow, and a burst of energy spreads out. Shunsui steps back as Lille transforms into an angelic form called Zavre, floating in the air. Shunsui is stunned by this transformation. As he ponders his next move, Lille unleashes a barrage of attacks aimed directly at Shunsui. Shunsui takes the full brunt of the assault. Blood spills from Shunsui's body as he's thrown back, crashing into a building. Blood continues to pour from his wounds as he sits slumped against the wall. Shunsui mutters to himself, "I can still run pretty well, if I do say so myself, despite these injuries. Truth be told, it would have been easier if I'd just died right there on the spot. That's the curse of being ridiculously strong. You can't even pass out, much less die. I guess Nanao-chan will be the only one to make fun of me when I say things like that, won't she?" But Lille fires more attacks at Shunsui. Shunsui gets back on his feet, dodging the attacks by a hair's breadth, and manages to climb through a window into a nearby building. As Lille continues his relentless assault, Shunsui enters the building and runs to gain some distance. Lille taunts him, "You run well for someone so injured, but do you really think you can escape from me?" Shunsui contemplates something briefly, but before he can act, Lille attacks again, saying, I told you, no weapon is capable of cutting me down. You won't defeat me. Oh, I heard you, Shunsui replies, and in a sudden move, he cuts Lille's attack in half with his sword. Lille is shocked, and Shunsui follows up with, so how about a Kido blade? With that, he unleashes Hadona 78, Zangarin. A massive blast erupts from the building, shocking everyone below. Shinji and the others, arriving just in time, witness the explosion. On the other side of the battlefield, we see Shunsui, battered and beaten, sitting by the base of a statue. He reflects, not that I thought Kido would have much of an effect, but not even a scratch. So, this is what it's like to be out of options. He looks around and continues thinking, I've run all the way back to where we first arrived. Everyone should be far enough away by now. Then, with a resigned look, he adds, sorry if you get caught up in this too, but I guess it's time for my final option. Finally, Shunsui activates his Bankai. For the first time in Bleach, the Bankai of the Captain Commander of the Gotai 13 is revealed. Lille, floating in the air, notices the sky growing darker. Do my eyes deceive me? It feels as though the sky has dimmed, he remarks. Shunsui calmly responds, how does the world appear to you right now? Lille, stunned and confused, asks, what's happening? Shunsui explains, does it feel cold, lonely, full of despair? Lille, realizing something, says, I see. So this is your ability. Indeed, the surroundings have grown darker. Is this a Bankai? Shunsui confirms, yes it is. Lille, unfazed, retorts, it's dark, but I wouldn't go as far as to say it's full of despair, for I am the miracle of God. He launches a barrage of attacks toward Shunsui, adding, do not feel despair. The attack is massive, breaking half the ground and destroying all the nearby buildings. Lille declares confidently, I may not know the details of your Bankai, but there is one thing I do know. Kill the wielder of the sword, and the Bankai vanishes. However, as Lille continues speaking, he suddenly notices blood pouring from his body. Stunned and in disbelief, he looks down at his wounds. Shunsui smiles and says, Act 1, Tamaraiko Zono Wakachi. Clouds begin to form around them as Shunsui explains, the wounds you inflict on others appear on your own body, as if they were mirrored. Lille suffers another strike as Shunsui adds, unfortunately for you, these wounds won't kill you. Lille, now riddled with cuts, struggles to comprehend what's happening. What is this? He exclaims. I told you, Shunsui says with a calm demeanor. This is Bankai. This is my Bankai. Blood continues to spill from Lille's body as Shunsui continues. The man who regrets wounding his partner lies in bed, consumed by shame, stricken with an incurable disease. Lille's body starts to tear apart as blood flows profusely. Shunsui then transitions to Act 3. The surroundings transform into water, and Lille finds himself drowning. Despite his best efforts, he can't seem to escape, thinking, no matter how hard I try to fly, the surface only gets further away. Shunsui's voice echoes, it's obvious, isn't it? We're already submerged in water. Flap your wings all you want. It's too late now. Although I understand how you feel, throwing yourself into frigid water can freeze your resolve. But that's just you thinking only of yourself. Even a man with strong vows cannot discard a woman's affection. Isn't that right? Suddenly, the true form of Shunsui's Bankai appears. Long time no see, Ohana, he says. A young woman materializes behind him. Ohana? How intimate. How can you call me that when you only play with me once in a while? She replies. Shunsui, in his usual light-hearted manner, says, Oh, don't be like that. I'm sorry. Look, here's your Kaimanu Rotan. The woman responds sharply. That's what you get for always covering yourself in another woman's shadow. How unsightly. Still as harsh as ever, I see, Shunsui chuckles. I may be harsh, she replies, but I am your sword, your companion, choking back my own desires. Shunsui affirms, sworn to stand by your side until the end. He then faces Lille and says, Who are you speaking to? Do you think this battle is over? That you can kill me? I see you guys are still watching but not subscribing. That's not fair. Please leave a subscribe, okay? Now let's get back to it. Lille regains his composure and says, "Do not think that a mere Shinigami Bankai can kill one such as me." Shunsui readies his sword and responds, "A woman's affection is tragic. A violent and wild man has no ear for her. The least my hands can do is cut away the thread of regret that binds you for the grand finale, the final act." With those words, Shunsui launches his final attack. The strike hits Lille's neck directly, and his neck explodes. Lille sinks into the water, and as he does, Shunsui also reaches his limit, collapsing from exhaustion. The woman beside him says, "At least we've won." However, in a shocking twist, a laser beam suddenly pierces through Shunsui's chest, leaving both him and the woman in disbelief. Lille begins to reform, laughing. "I told you! Do not think that a mere Shinigami Bankai can kill the embodiment of God." Shunsui, utterly shocked, says, "What the hell? I cut off his head, and he didn't die. I'm in trouble now." Lille grins. "Yes, this is despair. Weapons cannot kill me. Your power cannot deceive me. Despair, for I am immortal. I am invincible. I am the privilege and the misery of God. All sinners are powerless before me." Lille launches another massive attack towards Shunsui, a strike so powerful that it cuts down the surrounding structures and causes a massive explosion, leaving destruction in its wake. As Lille finds Shunsui, he mocks him, "To think you still have the strength to run from my light of judgment, especially after your black Dal-E has been hollowed out by my purifying light. But I expected nothing less from the head captain. So sinful." Shunsui, completely beaten up and on the verge of collapse, mutters, "Sakura no Suki, let us run away." Exhausted, Shunsui's condition worsens, and the woman beside him, his sword spirit, speaks, "I can do nothing more against an opponent that even Karamatsu Shinjuku cannot kill. You have fought until you were out of breath and nearly unconscious. Should you run now, no one would condemn you. Rest for a while, and I shall carry you away." As Shunsui's eyes begin to close, suddenly, Nanao appears, pleading, "Please wake up." Shunsui, surprised and happy to see Nanao, is momentarily revitalized. Nanao, caught up in his Bankai, interrupts him and insists, "There's no time to talk about promises. You must give me your Zanpakuto. Quickly forget the promise you made to my mother." At that moment, Lille appears and taunts them. "What is this? I wondered what all the commotion was. So the adjutant has returned? After the captain tried so hard to keep you away, you still lack reverence for life. How very sinful." Lille launches yet another attack, and after it seems they have narrowly escaped again, he mutters, "My eyes are getting dry now, from looking upon sinners for too long." Shunsui and Nanao hide somewhere nearby. Shunsui speaks softly. "So, I guess you knew about everything with your mother?" Nanao responds, "Yes." Shunsui sighs. "The entire time?" "Yes," she affirms. Shunsui, humbled, says, "Man, no, I'm no match for you. All right then, I give it back." With that, he hands Nanao her original Zanpakuto. Lille is flying in the air, scanning for Shunsui and Nanao. "They're gone. Where are they hiding?" he mutters, frustration evident in his voice. As he begins searching, he senses something. "What do we have here? I see. So Kaizor allows you to stay within a shadow for this long. In that case, what would happen if I were to eliminate that shadow from the ground?" Suddenly, Shunsui emerges from a small shadow, launching a surprise attack. He jumps into the air and kicks Lille directly on the head, revealing the true cover of his sword. Lille, caught off guard, says, "So, you can even emerge from such a tiny shadow?" We then see a flashback from just a few minutes ago. Shunsui and Nanao are holding a certain sword. Nanao, determined, says, "You don't want to give me the sword, I know that, and it's for my own good. But just as my mother decided to abandon the curse of her own free will, I've decided to accept the curse of my own free will. And even if I do accept it, I just get the feeling that the man I admire would laugh off the curse as foolish." Shunsui, reluctantly but understanding her resolve, says, "All right, I'll give it to you. With this sword, I am sure. Back in the present, Lille floats in the air while Nanao stands firm beside him. He remarks, "Now that I've gotten a good look, I see only the adjutant has emerged. Does this mean she intends to fight me alone?" Nanao, unwavering, finally unleashes her sword, Shinken Hakyoken. As she brandishes the blade, Lille questions, "What is this sword of yours? It shines with a rather vulgar brightness. It's so bright I can't even see the blade." Nanao calmly replies, "If that's so, good. This sword possesses the power of gods and reflects their might. If it appears to your eyes to be shining, then that means it's capturing the divine light you emit." Lille, amused by her words, retorts, "I have no idea what you're talking about, but it certainly doesn't feel bad to be called a god." Nanao launches an attack directly at Lille. Unfazed, he says, "Do you intend to cut me with that sword? Very well, go ahead and try. There is no sword that can cut me." As Lille defends himself, Nanao steps back, realizing he merely dodged her strike. Lille continues, "I was wondering about the strength of that sword, but upon closer inspection it doesn't even have a blade. It's a clear sign that it is dangerous, attacking someone with a sword like that. Did you really think you could cut my body? But this is as far as you're going to get. You should have made sure your last attack killed me." Nanao stands there, briefly terrified by Lille's words. Lille taunts, "A god's misery will not be caught off guard for a second time." Meanwhile, Shunsui, deep in thought, finally moves. He gets up and walks over to Nanao, placing his hand on the sword with her. "Here we go," he says, offering his support. "Thank you," Nanao replies, feeling emboldened by his presence. Together they prepare for the next phase of the battle. As Lille rises into the air, he begins to gather energy from all around, forming a massive glowing sphere above him. Preparing to launch his final attack, Lille sneers at Shunsui and Nanao standing together below him. "So, you've shown yourself at last," he says, his voice dripping with disdain. "What an awful captain, hiding behind your subordinates. Here are my trumpets and praise." Shunsui, standing calmly next to Nanao, whispers, "Nanao-chan, here we go. I'll be right behind you, supporting you." Nanao nods, feeling his confidence flowing into her. "Yes," she replies. "It's as though your kindness is strengthening me." As Lille releases his devastating attack, Nanao and Shunsui counter with their own. In a flash of brilliance, their combined strike slices through Lille's body, cutting him clean in half. Stunned, Lille holds his severed torso, shock visible on his face. Nanao, standing tall, responds to his earlier arrogance. "You said something about God, about repelling divine power." Even as his body is falling apart, Lille smiles through the pain. To repel the power of a god, that is such a grievous sin. With that, his body explodes mid-air, fragments of his form scattering everywhere, his feathers spreading across the battlefield as his presence fades. As the dust settles, Nanao, weakened from the effort, begins to collapse. Shunsui catches her just in time, his voice gentle. "You did great, Nanao. How about we catch up with everyone else now?" But as he tries to move, Shunsui himself collapses, his exhaustion finally taking its toll. Lying on the ground, he sighs, "Yes, we'll do that, after a little rest." And so, the battle comes to a close. Shunsui, with the help of Nanao, defeats Lille, bringing an end to the hard-fought fight. As Perida steps onto the battlefield, Kenpachi notices him and mutters, "What is that?" Mayuri, standing nearby, responds, "Are you asking a question or talking to yourself? If you're talking to yourself, I'll simply ignore it." Though it's hard to imagine anyone in the 13th Court Guard Squads being foolish enough to ask about something they've never seen before, it's only natural for such a comment to begin. Kenpachi glares at Mayuri, annoyed. "Fine, I'll just kill him then." He lunges at Perida, but before he can strike, he loses an arm. Blood spills from the wound, and he grins, saying, "So he took an arm, that's all." We then see Perida split in half, and Kenpachi smirks, "But in exchange, I split his head right in two." Blood gushes from Pernida's head. In the next moment, however, Pernida regenerates, shocking both Kenpachi and Mayuri. Mayuri, unfazed, repeats, "So, were you asking a question or talking to yourself?" As Pernida transforms, his head begins to grow, and veins pulse across his body. Kenpachi, watching, scowls. His damn head just changed. What the hell is that thing? Mayuri responds, "It's an adaptation suited for intense combat. But what purpose could it serve? He's quite unsettling." Kenpachi retorts, "Takes one to know one." Suddenly, blood begins to pour from Kenpachi's hand, and to everyone's shock, his hand starts attacking him uncontrollably. "His broken arm is moving on its own," someone exclaims. Kenpachi's hand tries to slash him, but he grabs it with his other hand and tears it off, blood spilling everywhere. Crushing his own severed hand, he picks up his sword. Mayuri, slightly taken aback, comments, "Ripping your arm off was a good choice, just as I'd expect from the great Captain Zaraki. If you hadn't acted so quickly, your body would likely have been reduced to an unappetizing, dense heap of tissue." Kenpachi smirks. "Are you giving me a compliment or looking for a fight?" Mayuri replies, "Which do you think?" Kenpachi scoffs. "Either way is fine with me. But what's with this guy's power?" Mayuri, unfazed, says, "As usual, I can't tell if you're asking a question or talking to yourself. Regardless, I'm not certain myself. The best advice now is to avoid getting too close to him." Kenpachi retorts, "How am I supposed to cut him without getting close?" Mayuri orders, "Nemu, bind Kenpachi's arm and stop the bleeding." Kenpachi growls, "And how am I supposed to cut him like this?" Mayuri dryly replies, "Another question. There's more to combat than just cutting your enemy. Let's find a method to deal with him that doesn't involve that." Kenpachi chuckles. "Sorry, this time I was talking to myself." With that, he launches directly at Pernida, saying, "If you don't know his power, then we just need to split him in two before it gets to us." Mayuri also draws his sword. Kenpachi swings at Pernida, slicing part of his head. But suddenly, Kenpachi's foot buckles, and he collapses to the ground. To everyone's shock, Mayuri then stabs Kenpachi, causing him to yell in pain. Mayuri explains calmly, "As I suspected, supporting only your limbs causes strain in other areas." Mayuri then withdraws his sword, leaving Kenpachi stunned. Suddenly, something begins happening to Pernida's body as he cries out, veins erupting all over him. At the same time, Kenpachi starts to stir. Mayuri, noticing, says, "I stabbed you for your own good, Zaraki. It was simply unavoidable, so stop giving me that look." Kenpachi struggles to move his eye, though it's laced with veins. Mayuri chuckles. "To think you're able to move your eyeball. Truly, you are a terrifying beast. I suppose I'll need to further modify my paralysis capabilities for the next time I need to stab you." How enlightening. Not only have you helped me understand our enemy's abilities, but you've shown me areas where my own power can improve. Gratitude is the only word to express my feelings toward you. Mayuri turns his attention back to Pernida, moving closer. Smiling, he says, "By paying the high cost of one of my beloved captains from the Gotei 13, I've acquired valuable insight into the true nature of your power. Do you understand what this means, my unusual Quincy? You haven't replied, but I shall continue. What I'm saying is that I'm on the verge of tears at this moving sacrifice. Precious victories always require precious sacrifices. Thus, you should offer up your body for experimentation as a tribute to this sacrifice." As Mayuri finishes, Pernida rises, and something strange glints in his eyes. Mayuri observes, "Oh my, it seems reason doesn't reach you. You lack the refinement to appreciate noble deeds." In an instant, Pernida splits his body in two, shocking Mayuri. From Pernida's body emerges a massive chained hand with two eyes in its center. Staring at it, Mayuri murmurs, "I suppose this must be the left arm of the Spirit King." The hand shatters its chains, fully unfurling, with veins extending from each finger. Pernida has completely transformed into an enormous hand, visible in the center, now towering over the battlefield. Everyone is shocked by the revelation that Pernida is indeed the hand of the Spirit King. Mayuri addresses everyone's unspoken question, saying, I couldn't tell you, as I've never met him, but his spiritual pressure is almost identical to the samples I collected from the collapsed Ukitake. Assuming that the entity Ukitake made a pact with was indeed the Spirit King's right arm, it wouldn't be surprising if the left arm was also separated and roaming freely. The unusual form of an arm with a single eye matches Urahara Kisuke's description as well, although whether it's truly a single eye is up for debate. Suddenly, veins begin to extend from Pernida's right hand, launching an attack on Mayuri. Mayuri quickly activates a shield, blocking the assault. He mutters, My only question is, why would the left arm of the Spirit King serve Yhwach? And why should it be a source of concern compared to the excitement I feel right now? Veins continue to pour from Pernida's body, and he emits a sound that almost seems joyful. Mayuri smirks, saying, You understand language? Another unexpected development. The wonders never cease. And just what organ are you using to give yourself a voice? As others look on, someone wonders aloud why Mayuri is smiling, asking what he finds amusing in all this. We've put a lot of effort into making this video, yet many of you still haven't subscribed. So please consider subscribing to support our work. It would mean a lot. Thanks. Now back to the video. Mayuri replies, What is there to be so happy about, you ask? Discovering a subject of observation you've never encountered before, only to have it continuously exceed your expectations. If that's not happiness, what is? Pernida then directs his gaze at Mayuri, and massive veins erupt from his body, spreading across the battlefield. Still intrigued, Mayuri says, Show me more, left arm of the Spirit King. Then, in a deep voice, Pernida responds, I am not the left arm. My name is Pernida. Mayuri raises an eyebrow and says, What was that? Speak up. Pernida tries to articulate himself again, saying, My name, it is not left arm. My name is Pernida. Mayuri chuckles. That's quite a long name. Besides, I'm the one who discovered you, so naming rights belong to me, not you. But since the request is coming from the subject itself, I suppose I could make an exception, just this once, though I might adjust the spelling a bit. Pernida glares at Mayuri, struggling to comprehend his words. Feeling slighted, he mutters, You are insulting me. I will not tolerate any kind of insult. Pernida raises his hand, channeling his power as veins extend into the ground. From those veins, a gigantic stone hand emerges, rising from the earth. Mayuri observes and remarks, What's this? You think you can pass your nerves through inorganic material too? How unexpected. Very good. As Pernida attacks, Mayuri jumps back, defending himself. He stumbles but uses his chained hand to regain his balance. Just as he steadies himself against a wall, Pernida's veins infiltrate the structure, shattering it and sending Mayuri tumbling down. As he falls, Pernida summons two massive stone hands and brings them down, crushing Mayuri beneath them. An explosion erupts, and the onlookers momentarily think Mayuri has been destroyed. But in the next moment, he shatters the stone hands and steps out, unscathed. What you're witnessing is merely explosive reactive armor, he says with a smirk. I won't explain it to you. Look up each word in the dictionary. Using his power, Mayuri lifts himself into the air. Pernida watches in shock as Mayuri remarks, You've seen this before, haven't you? Yes, of course you have. This is the technique used for levitation. He pauses, then continues, Though that's the name Ishida Uryu used, so the original Quincy term might differ. Regardless, go ahead and extend your nerves across the entire ground surface. It means nothing if I never set foot on it, does it? Pernida, visibly rattled, suddenly notices something attached to his finger. Mayuri smirks and says, Now then, I'll collect my sample as planned. In the next moment, one of Pernida's fingers explodes, causing him to scream as blood spills from his body. Mayuri stands beside the severed, gigantic finger, examining the preserving solution and strings around it. Yes, this will keep it fresh until the fighting settles down, at which point I'll construct a storage tank. Noticing an eye on the finger, Mayuri is about to continue his work when Pernida's veins suddenly reach for him, attempting to invade his body. An explosion erupts, and Mayuri's hand blasts apart. Unfazed, he quickly stitches it back together and declares, "I've altered the configuration of my nerves, blood vessels, and muscles. Don't think you'll be able to control my body so easily, Perida." Perida, still shocked, watches as his third finger twitches and moves independently. Mayuri stands confidently, satisfied with his quick recovery. "What a failure," he mutters. "Not performing one-handed surgery for so long has dulled my touch. How clumsy of me." Perida, sensing an opening, taunts, "So, you're panicking, Mayuri?" Mayuri smiles and replies, "Do I look like I'm panicking?" "Then panic a little more," Perida sneers, extending his finger to launch another attack. Mayuri counters, sending Pernida's head reeling backward. "So even a severed finger can become another left hand," Mayuri muses. "It seems I won't be taking you back in pieces after all." Another one of Pernida's fingers breaks, and he clutches it, questioning whether Mayuri is panicking again. Through Pernida's blurred vision, he sees Mayuri watching calmly. Mayuri remarks, "I see. I read about this once in a book when I was young. The right arm of the Spirit King is stationary, while the left arm advances. But knowledge from a book is simply knowledge. It means nothing to me without proof in my own hands. To think I'd experience both arms, one after the other, like this. Truly, this is a fantastic battle." From Pernida's broken fingers, 2 more hands emerge, splitting him into 3 separate entities. Mayuri stands before them, drawing his sword as Pernida continues his assault. Finally, Mayuri decides to unleash his ultimate move. Bankai, everyone watching reacts with shock, realizing that Captain Mayuri intends to use poison. One whispers, "The captain is going to poison that thing to death?" Mayuri overhears and scoffs. "Poison it to death? Why would I resort to something so excessive? The information I've gathered has finally reached maturity." A massive figure materializes behind Mayuri. This is his Bankai, but it's unlike anything anyone has seen before. "This is a modified Bankai," Mayuri explains with a smirk. "A different form of its power. Its ability is to create a new Ashisogi Jizo, based on the data I've provided throughout the battle. Don't quite understand? You will when you see it." The gigantic puppet lets out a roar, and another figure, a smaller puppet in yellow, emerges from it, screaming loudly in agony. Mayuri explains, "This puppet experiences excruciating pain whenever it comes into contact with the ground or air, but let's set that aside for now." Pernida suddenly launches an attack with his veins toward Mayuri's Bankai. Mayuri calmly explains, "What's important is that the surface nerves of this Bankai are divided into 70,000 layers. In other words, even if you drive your nerves into it, you'll only peel off one surface layer at a time. And that's all." Pernida tries to infiltrate the layers, causing Mayuri's Bankai to roar in pain. But in the next moment, the Bankai counterattacks, devouring one of Pernida's hands. Mayuri chuckles. "What's the matter? Feel free to resist. Assuming, of course, you can manage to drive your nerves in 70,000 times before being entirely consumed." Mayuri laughs maniacally. "Now then, how's your stomach? Digestion might take a while since you swallowed them whole. Still, making you a toothless entity was the correct decision. If you had chewed them into pieces and multiplied their number in your stomach, not even you could have endured that." Suddenly, something begins to happen to the gigantic Bankai body. Even Mayuri looks shocked as Pernida bursts out of the Bankai's mouth, launching a direct attack at Mayuri. Pernida fires an arrow, which Mayuri narrowly dodges. The arrow smashes into a building, causing a massive explosion. Pernida regains his footing, now wielding a bow and arrow. He declares, "You forgot that I, Pernida, am a Quincy. I kill my enemies with a bow and arrow." Mayuri, momentarily stunned, responds, "No, I didn't forget. I simply never imagined the left arm of the Spirit King would do something so brazen as to call itself a Quincy." Pernida retorts, "Brazen? What is brazen?" As he speaks, he regenerates the fingers that had been severed earlier. "How can calling myself a Quincy be brazen? I have always been a Quincy. You've insulted the Quincy this entire time." Pernida's voice deepens with anger, "And I am sick of it." Mayuri thinks, "What was that?" His manner of speaking changed for a moment. In fact, his vocabulary seems to have been expanding gradually since the start of this battle. Is he regaining memories as the Spirit King, or is he evolving through some other means? Just then, Perida creates 5 separate bows and arrows from his 5 fingers, launching a barrage of attacks toward Mayuri. Stunned, Mayuri jumps back, trying to evade, but then notices that Perida's nerves are attached to the arrows, allowing him to guide them mid-flight. One arrow strikes Mayuri, while he narrowly dodges the second. But as the arrow touches the ground, it veers back toward Mayuri, guided by the nerves running along the surface. Mayuri realizes he's controlling the arrow's path through the ground with his nerves. There's no way I can dodge this one. Suddenly, Nemu appears, slicing the arrow in half, but in the process, her own hand is injured, and she collapses to the ground. Before she can be attacked again, Mayuri grabs her, pulling her to safety. He tosses her aside and scolds, "Idiot! Why did you get involved? I didn't give you any orders. If you keep falling to the ground like that, you'll be reduced to a meatball." Nemu responds, "I determined that you needed a shield in this battle." Mayuri, unimpressed, says, "I don't recall teaching you to make determinations for yourself. Support is acceptable, but self-determination?" Nemu quietly replies, "No, you didn't teach me that." Mayuri raises an eyebrow. "Are you saying you've learned something on your own without me teaching you?" Nemu hesitates. "I don't know." Mayuri sighs. "Nemu, or rather, Nemuri no 7. You're aware that ever since Kurosaki Ichigo's group appeared, we've fought countless battles, and I've taught you too much. Do you have any idea how troublesome it would be for me to raise a replacement for you in the same era as the current you?" Nemu responds, "I do not." Mayuri shouts, "If you don't understand, then don't act on your own judgment. You don't have the freedom to decide when you die. You only die when I order it. If you understand, then get up." Nemu looks at him and nods. "Yes, I understand, Mayuri-sama." Nemu says, "My apologies for my tardiness in delivering this to you. It's a flesh supplementation serum." She hands a vial to Mayuri, adding, "I actually came out here to give this to you." Mayuri quickly takes the serum and injects it into his body. Within moments, his arms regenerate. He smirks and asks, "Were you aware from the beginning that I'd forgotten to bring this with me into battle?" Nemu replies, "Yes. When the current intrusion began, you didn't go to the medicine cabinet as you always do before a fight." Mayuri looks at her with a hint of approval. "So, you've been watching closely. How very diligent." Nemu bows slightly. "My apologies." Meanwhile, Perida's gigantic hand begins to rise once more. Mayuri leaps from the rooftop, hovering in the air as he heads straight for Perida. As he approaches, Perida launches a barrage of arrows, but Mayuri dodges them effortlessly. Then, Perida attacks from all 3 directions with his other 2 hands, creating a tri-directional assault. Mayuri quickly calls out to Nemu, "Can you hear me?" "Yes," she responds. "I'll tell you the plan," he begins. "I'm moving around like this to disperse an ultra-concentrated anesthetic across a wide area. It's uncertain what effect it will have on the main body, but I gauged the strength of the nerves attached to his arrows from our previous encounter. This concentration should be able to neutralize them. Admittedly, I'll be slightly affected as well, but that's unavoidable." He continues, "Nemu, your task is to inject the nerve-freezing agent directly into a neutralized arrow. Unlike an anesthetic, this agent doesn't cause the target to go limp by blocking nerve signals. Instead, it literally freezes nerve transmission, and every organ connected to those nerves will be forcibly locked in place the moment it's affected. In other words, once under the effect of this drug, an open eyelid won't close, a contracted heart won't beat, and an open mouth won't shut." Nemu quietly says, "Your voice is very loud, Mayuri-sama." "Silence!" Mayuri snaps before continuing. "I do not know the exact composition of his body. However, it is certain that blood flows through it. With this drug, we'll freeze the flow of his blood and kill him. The nerves across the ground have already been neutralized by the anesthetic, so stepping on them shouldn't be an issue. Now, inject the agent directly into the fallen segment, faster than he can sever his own nerves from it." Nemu nods, pulls out the injection, and swiftly launches it into the targeted atom. As the agent takes effect, The atom begins to harden, turning to stone. The petrification spreads rapidly across Perida's body, transforming his entire hand into stone, his eye frozen wide open. The other two hands begin to harden as well, leaving only one hand unaffected. Realizing the threat, Perida acts quickly, tearing off the infected finger before the virus can spread to his final hand. We've put a lot of effort into making this video, yet many of you still haven't subscribed. So please consider subscribing to support our work. It would mean a lot. Thanks. Now back to the video. The petrification halts immediately. Mayuri, who was moments away from celebrating victory, looks on in shock as Perida's voice changes, becoming deeper and more menacing. You think something like this is going to take me out, Mayuri? Perida sneers, his tone unnervingly similar to Kenpachi's. Mayuri, stunned, mutters, "What happened to his speech?" He thinks to himself, it sounded just like Kenpachi. Is this creature evolving through some other means? No, it's evolving by absorbing information from everything it connects its nerves to. Not good. If his nerves have evolved to Kenpachi's level, then Nemu's reaction speed will be no match for him. Suddenly, Perida regenerates his entire hand, as if the damage had never occurred. Mayuri shouts, "Nemu, get back!" His mind races. This is that ability! Suddenly, Nemu notices something, her eyes widening as she calls out, "Mayuri-sama!" The scene transitions into a flashback. We see Akun, who says with a laugh, "What? Captain Mayuri won't call you by your name?" A younger Nemu looks down and replies, "No. Lately, he always refers to me as just Nemu." Akun smirks. "So what? Nemu is your name, isn't it?" Nemu shakes her head slightly. "No. My name is Mayuri no. 7. The flashback shifts to Akun and another doctor performing an experiment. Akun comments, "Well, isn't this the legacy of the initial stages of the Nemuri Artificial Soul Project?" The doctor replies, "You mean the project that brought Nemu-chan into existence?" Akun nods. "Yep. These here are no, 1 through 3. I call them legacy. But to be blunt, they're just remains." The doctor sighs. "At first it was one failure after another. But with No 4, we finally managed to create a functioning brain. Then No 5 advanced to the stage where it could fuse successfully with its artificial body. Using that technology, Captain Mayuri enhanced himself and rose to his current rank." Akun continues, "No, 6 reached the developmental equivalent of a 2-year-old, but then its cells stopped dividing, and it died. That was the limit of the artificial soul's cell lifespan. But when number 7 exceeded that lifespan and continued to develop, Captain Mayuri was, well, overjoyed, to say the least." The doctor looks at Nemu thoughtfully and asks, "Do you think that's why Mayuri-sama stopped calling you No 7? Nemu hesitates. "Why are you asking me? Why don't you ask him directly?" Akun chuckles. "Because I don't think he'd answer you. But there's one thing I think. It's because he's embarrassed." "Embarrassed?" Nemu echoes, confused. "Mayuri-sama does not seem to possess such an emotion." Akun grins. "You say some crazy things sometimes. But don't you remember what the captain said before? An artificial Shinigami with a soul created from nothing is every Shinigami's dream. But to have a dream while still awake is absurd. Thus, I shall call this project the Nemuri Project." Akun continues, "It was the captain's usual irony, but what I'm about to say is just my own idea. Artificial Shinigami aren't every Shinigami's dream. They're Captain Mayuri's. Understand this. Eating, sleeping, breathing, learning, and growing day by day. You're doing all of those things, Nemu. Captain Mayuri is living in a dream through you. Have you realized how embarrassing that might be for him?" Nemu tilts her head. "I didn't realize that." Akun chuckles softly. "You're getting smarter every day. You'll figure it out eventually. Even I know that." Nemu hesitates. "If I stayed ignorant, do you think Mayuri-sama would have kept calling me number 7? Akun shakes his head. "Not a chance. You're the captain's greatest masterpiece. It's impossible for you not to evolve." The flashback fades, and we return to the present. Nemu snaps out of her thoughts and leaps into action. As Perida moves to crush Mayuri, Nemu intercepts him, catching Mayuri and destroying one of Pernida's massive hands in the process. Mayuri, stunned by her power, exclaims, "Nemu! When did—" Nemu cuts him off. "This is the power you gave me, Mayuri-sama. I have drawn out the capabilities of the Shinigami body you bestowed upon me to within 0.8% of the structural collapse threshold. There's no problem. I can maintain this output for another 400 seconds. Mayuri glares at her. "That is not what I'm talking about. When did I give you any kind of order to act?" "There was no order," Nemu replies calmly. "This is my purpose. My purpose is to protect you, Mayuri-sama." Mayuri scowls. "No, your purpose is to grow." Nemu, undeterred, says, "I believe I can demonstrate my growth by protecting you." With that, she throws Mayuri onto a nearby building, ensuring his safety. Mayuri lands smoothly and mutters to himself, "You've gotten quite a mouth. To think the day would come when I'd entrust a battle to Nemu. How degrading." Nemu, now standing between Mayuri and Perida, focuses on the enemy. "It can be destroyed," she says, "by shaving off 6% of my soul and firing it into the target." With precision, Nemu channels her energy and launches a powerful attack directly at Pernida's eye. The strike pierces forward, driving toward its mark. Nemu's attack leaves a gaping hole in Pernida's hand, blood spilling out as the damaged hand disintegrates in the air. Nemu falls to the ground, her eyes starting to close, believing she has defeated Perida. But suddenly, a barrage of veins surges forward, wrapping around her, and the broken parts of Perida begin to regenerate and reassemble themselves. Mayuri is stunned, watching in disbelief as Pernida's fragments reattach, forming once again. He recalls a memory of Zayelaporo Granz's words, "A man-made life form has perished. How can you find any anguish in that? Let me remind you of the words you once directed at me. As a scientist, perfection is meaningless, for despair is inherent in perfection. I, myself, despise perfection. Those were your words, Mayuri. So her death simply means she was a being far from perfect. Now you can return to your drawing board and strive to create something superior. Isn't that how your mind works?" Granz's voice continues to echo in Mayuri's mind. "Oh, now I understand. It's that worthless flesh of yours, Mayuri. You actually fooled yourself into thinking that creation was perfect. How far the mighty have fallen. You should be grateful to this abomination of a left arm. By eradicating that creation of yours, it stripped you of the arrogance and high airs you've been breathing in. With your options exhausted, you now stand impotent and alone. The thing you thought was perfection is now nothing but a distant memory. If I were in your place, I wouldn't know whether to laugh or cry." Mayuri sighs, murmuring, My. It is just as you say. Noticing my own negligence through the perspective of a scientist like you, it's almost enough to make me laugh and cry." Just then, Pernida's hand surges forward, attempting to crush Mayuri. But Mayuri dodges, narrowly evading the attack. He now stands beside Pernida's massive hand. Perida crushes the entire building with Nemu, revealing multiple eyes and even a tongue on its monstrous hand. Mayuri, drenched in blood, smirks and says, "I see. Now that Nemu's been reduced to mere fragments, you've come to devour her. Very well, go ahead. Eat your fill and lap up every last drop." As Perida crushes Nemu's body, absorbing her blood, Mayuri stands by, watching. "But I'll be taking back the cerebrum," he says calmly. In the next moment, he reaches into Pernida's veins, extracting something from within. A surge of energy flows as the extraction takes place. Mayuri warns, "You'd be wise to keep your distance from me, unless, of course, you enjoy being rendered immobile. Don't worry about me. Just hurry and finish devouring Nemu. If you insist on dragging it out, you'll die before you finish digesting her." Pernida's expression shifts to one of shock as strange bubbles begin to form all over his body. He looks confused, uncertain of what's happening. Mayuri explains, "That would be Nemu's gland. To push the limits of her regenerative capabilities, I embedded an organ to force accelerated cellular breakdown. It was designed to test the boundaries of my theories, constantly pushing her growth. Fail-safes within the organ enabled it to exceed its normal function. By ejecting the core cerebrum, this organ could form a direct link with the parietal lobe, seizing control of the body. He pauses, then adds with a smirk, "Pardon me, I forgot I was speaking to a layman. Simply put, if you consume this gland without the cerebrum, you will trigger accelerated regeneration, leading ultimately to self-destruction." In the next moment, Perida's body begins to destabilize, and he explodes into countless pieces, defeated. Mayuri walks away from the battlefield, the brain of Perida in his right hand, but there's a hint of despair on his face. Suddenly he collapses, realizing the explosion has taken his legs. "I see. I survived the blast, but my legs didn't. Now this is a problem," he mutters. "Doesn't this put me in the same position as Kenpachi?" Mayuri notices Ikkaku approaching and says, "I thought you would have turned tail by now. 11th Division. A group of fools beyond imagination indeed. I suppose I should thank you for not getting in my way during the battle." Mayuri continues, "Listen carefully. Below the rubble on the right, about 30 steps from here, you'll find 2 body containers that Nemu brought along with her. All you need to do is press the red button on the right side to open them. Once that's done, everything will be fine. It took me some time, but I've dezombified them. It did cost me a fair bit of my own life force, but I won't complain. After all, he did save my life." We then see Toshiro Hitsugaya emerge, finally restored. Ikkaku helps Mayuri and Toshiro, the latter thanking Mayuri for his efforts. Mayuri gives another order. "Put me and Captain Zaraki in the empty containers as well, if you'd be so kind." Ikkaku responds, "We'll see you soon, Captain Mayuri. Captain Zaraki, be right back." Before leaving, Ikkaku kneels and says, "Thank you, Captain Mayuri. Thank you for taking care of Captain Zaraki." As the container closes, Ikkaku leaves the area. Mayuri, now enclosed in the container, murmurs to himself, "Today seems to be the day for a deluge and inundation of gratitude. My, what a sickening feeling. Yet all of it pales in comparison to witnessing true transformation and evolution. At long last, a kenpaku I developed from rudimentary scraps has evolved on its own accord. Finally, I've stepped out of your shadow, Urahara Kisuke." He smirks. "For the life of me, I can't quite picture the anguished look on your face when you learn of my feat, but that will make the moment all the sweeter when I see it in person. So the next time we meet, I'll show you the real gap between you and me." With this, the chapter of Mayuri and Perida concludes. The chapter begins with Urahara standing in front of a massive attack by Askin. Urahara is shocked as the attack grows, trapping him inside a giant ball created by Askin. Askin explains that this is the gift ball, the largest poison ball he can create, and names it Hashvault, remarking that the name is rather lame. As Urahara is still stunned, Askin elaborates on his ability, stating that the ball is a riot show that changes 48 times per second. To clarify, Askin explains that in 1 second, Urahara is hit with 48 different poison patterns. If Askin stands still and endures an attack for 1 second, he gets infected by all 48 varieties of poison. Urahara listens intently, seemingly calculating something. Askin continues, explaining that after the infection, he only needs time to analyze and acquire immunity to the poison. Urahara, sitting silently, appears to be planning something. Askin, noticing Urahara's actions, mocks him by saying, "You might have something that can alter or add to your strategy, but it's useless." Out of what he claims is generosity, Askin begins explaining his Hashvault ability further. Askin states that Hashvault adapts to any alterations in the poison. No matter how much the surface layer changes, as long as the base composition remains the same, he can develop immunity and instantly neutralize the poison. "I guess that's a convoluted way to put it, but you get it, right?" Askin remarks, as Urahara continues to sit, seemingly deep in thought, while Askin keeps talking. Askin then adds, "From this point forward, no matter how much you try to change your approach, you won't even be able to scratch me." Urahara continues his preparations, seemingly unfazed. Growing more confident, Askin taunts, "So, what are you going to do now, Urahara? Don't tell me that after I've taken away options 1 through 10, you've run out of ideas." He then ascends into the air, creating several large spheres that float around him. Askin reassures Urahara, saying, "No need to be startled, this is just a precaution. I don't like using big, tough-sounding words. People who use them don't seem like they're in control, right? I want to be an in-control kind of guy. But even so, I'll say it. It is absolutely impossible for you to escape from this gift ball." To this, Urahara chuckles and responds, "You want to prevent us from escaping that badly?" Askin replies, "Well, we are enemies. Do you even need to ask?" Urahara, sensing something deeper, says, "That's not it. Forgive me for saying this, but you don't seem to be acting out of a sense of loyalty." Offended, Askin retorts, "That's pretty rude. I like to think I'm at least twice as loyal as the average soldier, but you're not entirely wrong. It's not just about loyalty. I'm very interested in His Majesty. Does that make it sound like I'm putting myself above His Majesty? Because of course I would never do that. The material world, Hueco Mundo, Soul Society, who else other than His Majesty is trying to destroy these three worlds and create something entirely new? For instance, if we lose our chance with His Majesty now, do you really think someone else like him will come along later?" Askin turns to Urahara with a smirk. "Kisuke Urahara, you're a smart man, someone who's seen all the world has to offer. Don't you want to witness it? Don't you want to see what His Majesty will create after he destroys these three worlds?" Urahara, having had enough of Askin's rambling, suddenly moves. In a quick flash, Urahara attacks Askin with his sword. Askin immediately pulls back, using his abilities to dodge, and remarks, "You can still move that quickly? Pretty impressive, considering you're inside the gift ball." Urahara stands tall, his expression hardened. "I don't think I want to see it." Askin replies, "That's your answer, huh? Too bad. I really thought you'd be on board with me on this one." Urahara responds, "If it were Captain Kuratsuchi, he might have said he'd like to see something new. But even he wouldn't mean something like Yhwach's creation. If we're talking about creating something no one has ever seen before, that's something we have to do with our own hands. That's what it means to be a scientist." Askin laughs lightly. "I see. I can't say I dislike your answer. But still, I'd prefer to see what His Majesty will do." Before moving on, I request you to subscribe to my channel, as it's really hard to make these videos, and your subscription means a lot. Thank you. Coming back, without hesitation, Askin prepares his next move. He activates his gift ring, creating a giant ring of energy and hurling it toward Urahara. The ring disappears mid-flight, and Urahara is momentarily confused by its vanishing. In the next instant, the ring reappears, slowing down and attaching itself to Urahara's eyes. Before Urahara can react, his eyes suddenly explode, blood gushing out from them. Urahara stumbles back, blinded and in shock. Askin smugly explains, "The gift ring is designed for opponents as ridiculously strong as you, where my death-dealing doesn't work like it should. It's a fact. It concentrates my death-dealing ability into a single point with pinpoint accuracy, not just killing you slowly, but attacking vital areas directly. Sorry, but you're too damn strong. Lowering your immunity doesn't work, and wiping out all your resources doesn't work either. So I'm left with no choice but to kill you the old-fashioned way, by destroying your vital organs." Urahara, with blood still pouring from his eyes, slowly rises to his feet. "You're really out for blood, aren't you?" he mutters, his voice strained. "Well then, you leave me no choice either." At that moment, for the very first time, Urahara activates his Bankai. Askin is visibly shocked as a giant goddess-like figure materializes behind Urahara. Askin gasps in disbelief. There was no information about Urahara's Bankai in the intel Yhwach gave us. Urahara, now calm and composed, says, "This is the first time I've ever used it in front of anyone here." Askin, still processing what he's seeing, replies, "I see, that explains it. So, I've got to ask, what does it do?" Urahara says, "You're asking me that? You know I can't tell you." Askin replies, "Yeah, I suppose you've got a point. But it's kind of scary facing a Bankai without knowing what it does, you know?" Urahara smirks. "I understand. But even if I don't tell you, you'll figure it out soon enough." Suddenly, Askin is stunned as he notices his hand opening up by itself, revealing the exposed flesh beneath. Shocked, he quickly retreats, using his abilities to distance himself. Urahara, observing calmly, says, "You've got good composure. Most people would be so panicked they'd try to cut off their own arm. But as you've probably realized, my Bankai has an area of effect." Askin laughs nervously. "I'm just not brave enough to chop off my own arm." Urahara continues, "You might have picked up on part of it by now. But the true power of my Bankai isn't just this. Its real power is the ability to remake anything it touches. At that moment, Askin notices Urahara's eyes, which were destroyed earlier, are now completely restored. Askin stares in disbelief. Seizing the moment, Urahara swiftly slashes Askin's arm, blood spraying out. In quick succession, Urahara delivers another strike, but this time Askin manages to block it using his own attack. Askin grits his teeth and says, "You can see again, but I could just as easily destroy your eyes once more." Urahara, unfazed, replies, "I can, because I remade them." In the next moment, Urahara gently restores his own arm as well, using his Bankai's power. With his renewed arm, he channels more force into his sword and hurls Askin backward, sending him crashing into a building which collapses under the impact. Askin pulls himself up from the rubble, visibly frustrated. Now it's turning into one of those brute force battles I hate so much. And here I was thinking I could just take things at my own pace, but now everything's falling apart. Urahara approaches calmly and says, "You're one bad dude, Askin. But no matter how bad you are, you're not perfect. You haven't forgotten, have you? Your gift ball deluxe is a poison fortress from which there's no escape. The only reason you can breathe in here is because I'm keeping the poison at bay." Askin looks wary as Urahara inches closer. "You're not planning to dilute the poison further, are you? It's taking everything I've got just to keep moving." Askin scoffs. "Keep talking. I know what's up. Your Bankai is dangerous, even when you're crawling around like this." Urahara smirks again. "Well done. You've figured things out nicely. But it's already too late." Suddenly, blood gushes from Askin's chest, and his eyes widen in shock as he realizes his heart has been ripped out. He gasps, trying to comprehend what just happened, as blood spills onto the ground. Urahara stands over him and says, "Something you mentioned caught my attention. You said it was impossible to escape from your gift ball deluxe, but you never said anything about it being impossible to enter from the outside." Urahara explains, "So I tested that theory. I created a path from the outside to enter the ball. After all, no one can escape from within, but there's nothing stopping someone from coming in from outside." Askin, on the brink of death, looks up and sees none other than Grimmjow standing behind him, holding his heart. Urahara smirks. "Thanks for the help, Grimmjow." In the next instant, Grimmjow crushes Askin's heart in his hand, bringing an end to the battle. We see Askin lying on the ground, with Grimmjow standing beside him. Askin, gasping, says, "You can move again. Pretty impressive. I underestimated you." Grimmjow looks down at him. "You're still alive after I crushed your heart?" Urahara answers, "I was the one who healed Grimmjow on his way here." He continues, "I didn't remove his Arankar mask, but Arankar react very differently to Hado through their resurrection. I thought that fact might come in handy during this battle." Askin, struggling, asks, "You're telling me you knew this was coming?" Urahara shakes his head. "No, I said I thought it might come in handy, so I prepared. If you make 1,000 preparations and only use one, then it was still worth it. Preparing for all possibilities, without exception. That's how I operate." Askin is shocked and says, "That's insane." Urahara replies, "Why is that crazy? This is war. If you lose, you die. So to avoid that, you prepare for everything." Askin, now at the brink of death, whispers, "Now it makes sense. I think I finally understand why you're so terrifying." Before he can finish his thought, Grimmjow delivers another brutal blow to Askin, silencing him for good. Grimmjow glances at Urahara. He's one tough guy. Urahara seems to want to say something, but Grimmjow cuts him off. "My work here is done. I only came to kill the enemy, and now it's over." Suddenly, both Urahara and Grimmjow sense something. Askin, barely clinging to life, murmurs, "When I die, Gift Ball Deluxe will increase its intensity." In his final moments, Askin triggers a massive surge of energy. The Gift Ball Deluxe explodes in intensity, sending a wave of destruction all around. Urahara, weakened and bleeding, is unable to do anything. His Bankai fades away as blood pours from his body. Urahara, lying on the ground, softly says, "I guess this is it for me. I'll have to leave everything to Kurosaki and Kuchiki Rukia." With that, Urahara's and Askin's battle reaches its conclusion. Askin dies, and Urahara, severely injured, is left to rest. The fierce fight between Urahara and Askin comes to an end. The chapter begins with Gerard fighting against Toshiro and Byakuya. As Gerard attacks, his hand is suddenly sliced in two, and blood spills out, shocking everyone. Just then, Kenpachi enters, making his powerful presence known. He comments, "What the hell? All of the captain-ranked fighters got wiped out. How pathetic." His arrival causes the ground to tremble, and everyone senses his intense aura. Kenpachi, clearly annoyed, says, "How did you captains get here before me?" Meanwhile, Gerard lets out a pained cry as blood spills from his injured hand. But Gerard quickly regenerates, his hand coming back larger and even stronger than before. Toshiro is stunned, asking, "What just happened?" Byakuya explains, "That's his ability. Any injured area comes back larger and stronger." Toshiro realizes, so he wasn't this big to start with. Kenpachi, eager for a fight, smirks and says, "I can't wait to see what happens if I chop you into little pieces." As he steps forward, Toshiro blocks him, saying, "Hold on, Kenpachi." Kenpachi growls, "What the hell are you doing? If I hadn't eased up, you'd be in pieces right now." Toshiro replies, "You're a lot more cautious than I thought. How about stretching that carefulness a bit further?" Kenpachi looks confused, asking, "What the hell are you talking about?" Toshiro responds, "What do you think would happen if we made him even bigger than he already is?" Kenpachi scoffs, "Then what? I'll just cut him down again, piece by piece." Suddenly, Gerard's massive foot comes crashing down toward Kenpachi, shaking the whole area and causing massive destruction. In an impressive display, Kenpachi catches Gerard's foot, halting it completely. In the next moment, with a powerful swing, he hurls Gerard into a nearby building, reducing it to rubble. Kenpachi leaps into the air, brimming with confidence and declaring, "Basically, I just gotta forget about enjoying myself," as he goes for a powerful strike. He slams his sword down, aiming for Gerard's head, but Gerard blocks it with his massive shield. In the next instant, Gerard throws Kenpachi back, sending him crashing into a building. As Gerard stands tall, he draws his own sword and sneers, "You thought you could topple me? You're strong, I'll give you that. But you leave me no choice. As cruel as it may seem, an embodiment of darkness like you must fall before me." Kenpachi, getting back on his feet, mutters, "Damn, can't believe I couldn't cut through that tough shield. That just makes me want to slice you even more." Rising up with even more resolve, Kenpachi's aura crackles with lightning, filling the air with raw power. Toshiro, observing from a distance, exclaims, "What the hell? Is that a Shikai?" Byakuya, answering him, remarks, "Looks like Kenpachi's sword wasn't always in a state of permanent release. Or maybe there's no such thing as permanent release." Gerard charges forward, swinging his sword directly at Kenpachi, who blocks the attack with his own blade. The impact sends Kenpachi flying backward, but he digs his heels in, pushing Gerard back as well. Looking down, Kenpachi sees only a scratch on Gerard's blade, a reminder of how strong his opponent is. Gerard retaliates, striking Kenpachi and causing blood to spill. Kenpachi, now standing atop a nearby roof, remains unfazed and mutters, "What the hell is going on?" Gerard's voice booms, "You ask what this is? This is my miracle. My power is the embodiment of the people's fears, making my body indestructible and massive. When I'm broken, I become despair itself, and their hopes form my sword." Kenpachi scoffs, "I don't give a damn what you're saying. All I know is that your power defies logic. So I just gotta kill you without breaking that sword of yours, right?" He grins. "What a dumbass. Always announcing to everyone how to deal with you. You're gonna regret it." Gerard replies, "I tell you this to compensate for the massive strength difference between us. You simpleton, you'll regret your arrogance." Watching the exchange, Toshiro comments, "You know, I'm starting to feel like these two were cut from the same mold." Suddenly, Gerard launches a fierce attack, swinging his sword toward Kenpachi with terrifying force. Kenpachi dodges, and the strike obliterates nearby buildings. Taking advantage of the moment, Kenpachi launches himself toward Gerard, aiming straight for his face. Gerard tries to grab Kenpachi, but he evades and lands on another building, taunting, "Not bad, you dodged pretty damn well for a big guy." Gerard retorts, "And you, I meant to grab and crush you, you quick little bastard." Just then, Toshiro charges in, attempting to attack Gerard, but Gerard sneers, "You are not my opponent." Before he can harm Toshiro, Kenpachi intervenes, shoving Toshiro aside. We've put a lot of effort into making this video, yet many of you still haven't subscribed. So please consider subscribing to support our work. It would mean a lot. Thanks. Now back to the video. Toshiro, taken aback, shouts, "What the hell are you doing, Kenpachi?" Kenpachi retorts, That's my line. Stay out of my way, you annoying brats. Go somewhere and lay low. Toshiro is stunned as Byakuya appears, calmly advising, there's no point. Logic won't reach Zaraki either. Toshiro sighs. I know that. But we can't just leave him alone. This guy isn't someone Zaraki can take down by himself. Kenpachi hears this, and grinning challenges, want proof? Then watch. Toshiro notices that Kenpachi's eye patch has been removed. Realizing Kenpachi understands, at least on some level, that he needs full power to take down Gerard, Toshiro finally decides, I'll freeze this giant the moment I find an opening. When I do, provoke him with Senbonzakura. With maximum power, I should be able to freeze him right to the bones. But it would take some time, so be with me. Byakuya nods in agreement. As the intense battle continues, Kenpachi and Gerard clash fiercely, their swords sending shockwaves with each strike. Kenpachi is being heavily attacked, blood spilling from his wounds. Gerard mocks him, saying, What's wrong? Your strikes are losing their strength, but that's only natural. It's impossible to fight me without chipping your blade. My blade will leave its mark on you. With a powerful blow, Gerard sends Kenpachi flying into a wall. But Kenpachi gets back up instantly, launching himself back at Gerard. Gerard laughs. Such tenacity. You have an incredible spirit, but spirit alone can't make up for the difference in strength. He hurls Kenpachi away again, but to his shock, a frozen blast strikes his hand, freezing it solid. Gerard turns to see Toshiro and Byakuya, declaring, I've seen you both trying to catch me off guard. I am the mightiest Quincy, fastest, strongest, bestowed with everything. Do not think you can outwit me. Meanwhile, Kenpachi lies on the ground, covered in blood, and at his limit. His lieutenant Yachiru appears and says, What are you doing, Kenny? Get up. Let's keep going. Kenpachi, frustrated, mutters, Where the hell have you been all this time? Yachiru smirks. If you'd used me the right way, there's nobody you couldn't cut down. She touches Kenpachi's hand, and a surge of energy begins to flow from him. Kenpachi, surprised, says, What did you just do? This power? Yachiru grins. You don't know? This is called Bankai. As Yachiru activates Kenpachi's Bankai, a massive wave of energy erupts from him, stunning Byakuya, Toshiro, and even Gerard. Kenpachi's skin turns red, and his aura becomes monstrous. Gerard sneers, A sudden surge of Reiatsu. Could it be Bankai? But there's no grand transformation. What a disappointment. A broken blade like yours could never be a Bankai. He throws a punch at Kenpachi, who now shows a devilish grin, and shockingly, bites down on Gerard's arm. Gerard screams as Kenpachi tears his arm off with his teeth and hurls it toward a building. Gerard, unfazed, regenerates and shouts, Fool! I told you, tearing my arm off means nothing. Kenpachi leaps into the air, and as Gerard tries to block with his shield, Kenpachi slices through it and cleaves Gerard's head. Gerard, stunned, mutters, Impossible. My shield. Before Gerard can react, Kenpachi lands another brutal blow directly on his face, sending him crashing into the ground as he attempts to heal. Gerard, falling off the roof, extends his wings to catch himself, shouting, Impossible! A Shinigami pushing me to my limit. This cannot happen. Kenpachi, now fully consumed by his rage, watches Gerard, who launches a desperate attack and shouts, You should have run when you had the chance. Turn to ash. But Kenpachi just smiles, unfazed, and in a final move, slices Gerard cleanly in half from the head down. Gerard's face splits, and his body crashes to the ground, destroying nearby buildings. Kenpachi stands beside his bloody remains, victorious and surrounded by the aftermath of their fierce battle. As Toshiro cautiously approaches Kenpachi, Byakuya halts him. Toshiro mutters, Do you think? No, it's best not to get too close. Byakuya nods. He's clearly even less receptive to communication than usual. They watch as Kenpachi's eyes burn with a wild fury. Suddenly, he jumps into the air, letting out a thunderous roar, while Toshiro stares in shock. In that moment, Gerard uses his Shrift power, regenerating as his body begins to reattach itself. Toshiro and Byakuya look on in astonishment as Gerard's broken parts meld back together. Moments later, Gerard stands, now in a more powerful, updated form with a grotesque face and a new sword. Gerard smirks, launching a massive attack that shatters the surrounding buildings. Toshiro quickly freezes the falling debris to prevent further destruction. Standing tall, Gerard declares, "I am the most tenacious of God's soldiers. Even in death, I continue to swing my sword for him." He charges toward Kenpachi, who simply grins, awaiting the attack. But Gerard's speed is overwhelming, slicing off Kenpachi's hand. Yachiru, watching from the sidelines, is alarmed. She whispers, "I'm sorry, Ken-chan. It seems I unleashed too much of your power. Your body can't handle it." Gerard strikes Kenpachi again, knocking him to the ground, blood pouring from his wounds. Gerard sneers, "Still breathing, are you?" He raises his weapon for another strike, but Toshiro intervenes, attempting to block the attack. Gerard, however, easily swats Toshiro aside. Byakuya urges, "Toshiro, disengage your Bankai. You're at your limit." Toshiro, defiant, replies, "Not yet. Who said my Bankai ends when all the ice flowers fall?" As the last ice petals drop, Toshiro undergoes a transformation, no longer looking like a boy but a grown man in his full, true Bankai form. He mutters, "When Daiguren Hyorinmaru is complete, I grow older. I'm not fond of this look, but it's necessary." Gerard, stunned, asks, "Who are you?" Toshiro responds with his full name, leaving Gerard baffled. "Is this a second Bankai? But it matters not." Gerard unleashes another furious attack, declaring, "Now you shall be a more worthy opponent." Gerard hurls his shield at Toshiro, but Toshiro freezes it mid-flight, warning, "Don't be throwing that huge thing around. I told you we can't let anything fall." Gerard retaliates with his sword, but Toshiro instantly freezes it. Gerard sneers, "Have you forgotten? Damaging?" His words cut short as Toshiro calmly explains, "When frozen, all matter ceases to function." Gerard's sword is immobilized, rendered harmless, as Toshiro states, "Your so-called weapon is worthless now." In defiance, Gerard summons a final torrent of power with his hand alone, vowing, "I shall crush you with a force beyond mortal comprehension." Toshiro smirks. A Quincy bow, this late in the game? Before Gerard can release his attack, Toshiro freezes him entirely, utilizing the full force of Daiguren Hyorinmaru, immobilizing every part of Gerard's body. He concludes, "If you'd fired that arrow with more than 3 paces to spare, you might have stood a chance." Gerard remains frozen, defeated, as Toshiro stands victorious. As Toshiro catches his breath, Gerard suddenly shatters the ice surrounding him and grabs Toshiro with one massive hand. Toshiro's eyes widen as Gerard sneers, "I will not freeze. I am a soldier of God, beyond the constraints of this world's elements. I will crush you with my own hands." Gerard raises his other hand for a devastating blow, but suddenly he staggers. Kenpachi has struck his leg with full force, tearing through flesh with a feral grin. Covered in blood but filled with raw energy, Kenpachi grips Gerard's leg tightly, keeping him anchored. Gerard roars in anger, "Zaraki! My foot! How dare you!" Despite his grip on Toshiro, Gerard can't ignore Kenpachi's relentless assault. Meanwhile, Toshiro, pinned but undeterred, taunts, "Do you think you could touch me without consequence?" Gerard growls, "I told you, Shinigami, I will not freeze." But before he can act, he notices glinting blades forming around him in the air. Byakuya steps forward, his eyes cold and focused, as he releases his Bankai, Senbonzakura Kageyoshi. Thousands of sword petals swirl around, targeting Gerard from every angle. In a whirlwind of razor-sharp steel, the petals crash down upon him. Kenpachi holds Gerard firmly, preventing any escape, as Byakuya's deadly technique envelops them both in a storm of energy. With each petal strike, Gerard's body begins to freeze over, cracks forming as Toshiro's ice seeps deeper into him. A final surge of energy erupts, and Gerard's body fractures, his once mighty form shattering into countless frozen shards. The fragments fall to the ground, scattering across the battlefield. Toshiro, now visibly exhausted, starts to collapse, but Byakuya catches him, remarking, "It seems Bankai does take a toll, yet you've held up better than I expected." Toshiro breathes heavily. "You're perceptive. I'm barely at my limit. But their relief is short-lived. The air around them crackles with energy as they sense an ominous force coalescing. To their shock, the fragments of Gerard's body begin to gather and fuse, forming a swirling mass of yellow lightning. Slowly, the energy reshapes itself into Gerard's new form, a being pulsating with electrifying power. However, the ending takes a weird turn. The battle concludes abruptly, and we shift to Ichigo's fight, where Yhwach simply takes away Gerard's power for his own purposes. Ultimately, the battle comes to a close. The chapter begins with a subordinate approaching Hashvault, reporting, "All members have been dispatched in 5 different directions to search for the enemy." Hashvault, standing there deep in thought, responds, "Wait, did you say 5 different directions? And you also mean that Uryu Ishida headed in one of those directions?" The subordinate replies, "Yes, sir, as per His Majesty's order." Hashvault narrows his eyes and asks, "Which way was he headed?" The subordinate responds and provides Hashvault with the exact location Ishida was sent to. Hashvault gives the command, "Follow him. I cannot leave Warvelt. Follow him and notify me immediately if he takes any action that deviates from his orders." Hashvault then thinks to himself, how careless of him to come this far. He permits the subordinate to act independently, continuing, "There are no unusual surveillance eyes to monitor him here in Warvelt. Now that he has gained approval, it's all too easy for him to handle a solo mission." Noticing the subordinate still standing there, Hashvault says sharply, "What are you waiting for? Move out at once." Before the subordinate can move, a sword suddenly pierces through his eye, causing him to burn. A figure steps into view, speaking coldly, "Does Uryu Ishida bother you that much?" Hashvault turns to face the figure, calm but wary, and says, "Bazz-B, what is the meaning of this?" Bazz-B smirks and retorts, "What is the meaning of this? Shouldn't your life be the first thing out of your mouth?" With that, Bazz-B roars and charges at Hashvault, using his attack burner finger. He grabs Hashvault with one hand, but Hashvault swiftly leaps into the air, throwing his cloak over Bazz-B and using his sword to push him back. The cloak now covers Bazz-B's body, but Bazz-B uses his flames to burn through it. Without hesitation, he attacks Hashvault with a searing beam of energy. Hashvault quickly dodges the attack, regains his composure and says coldly, "I see now. Those wounds, they weren't caused by the enemy but by His Majesty's power. You weren't chosen, were you?" Bazz-B harshly replies, "What do you mean by you? You guys were the only ones who got chosen. Everybody below got consecrated. It was a massacre. The ones who managed to get away from the light and hide lost their standing, and those who got hit by the light lost their lives." Hashvault responds calmly, "I see. You have my sympathies." Bazz-B coldly snaps, "Sympathy? Don't give me that bullshit. I'm pretty sure you knew all about it, didn't you?" Hashvault replies evenly, "Is there any point in asking that? Would you even believe me if I said I didn't?" Bazz-B grins darkly and says, "Oh, I would. 'Cause we go way back, ain't that right? You know you?" Hashvault, standing silently for a moment, thinks to himself and then replies, "Bazz-B?" Bazz-B smirks and interrupts, "Call me Bazz just like old times." In the next moment, Bazz-B unleashes another attack, Burner Finger 2, creating 2 swirls of fire that flare menacingly around him. Hashvault, remaining composed, says, "It appears this discussion will prove fruitless. Look outside. It's going to be night soon." Bazz-B narrows his eyes and retorts, "When night comes and His Majesty sleeps, you and he will switch powers. I'm gonna kill His Majesty's power, and you along with it. You'll see it happen, won't you?" Without wasting any more time, Bazz-B launches toward Hashvault with his attack. Hashvault leaps into the air, narrowly dodging the fiery onslaught. In the next moment, Hashvault draws his sword, while Bazz-B creates a bow and arrow, aiming directly at him. As Bazz-B prepares to shoot, the scene transitions into a flashback. In the past, a young Hashvault attempts to hunt a rabbit but misses his mark. Suddenly, an arrow flies through the air, striking the rabbit. A voice shouts, "What are you doing? You're terrible at this!" Hashvault, just a boy, turns around and asks, "Who are you?" A young Bazz-B grins and replies, "Hey, are you trying to make the great Bazz tell you his name first?" You tell me your name, you white onion-looking bastard? Hashvault calmly responds, so your name is Bazz then. He then introduces himself. I'm Yhwach Hashvault. Bazz-B, caught off guard, exclaims, you must be pretty crafty to trick me, the great Bazz, into telling you my name first. You've got some promise. Hashvault replies flatly, I didn't trick you. You just went ahead and announced it. Why are you following me? Bazz-B smirks and says, why am I following you? A hopeless loser like you doesn't seem like he'd be able to catch his own food, so I'm looking out for you. What's that look for? Say something back. You're making me look like the bad guy here. Hashvault, unbothered, responds, I guess you're right. I can't even make a bow and arrow like you. I really am a loser. Bazz-B, visibly annoyed, snaps, Yhwach, you dumbass, that's not true. I can do this because I'm a natural. You're not as hopeless as you think you are. Don't worry, you're fine. Hashvault replies calmly, but you're the one who said I was hopeless first. Bazz-B breaks his arrow in frustration and retorts, nobody else can do what I can. Look at your friend here. It's true, right? Hashvault shrugs and says, who knows? I don't really pay attention to stuff like that, so I don't know. Also, could you stop calling me Yhwach? I hate that name. Bazz-B, confused, asks, why? All right then. What do your parents call you? Hashvault's expression darkens as he replies, I don't have any parents. I live with my uncle. Bazz-B asks, so then, what does he call you? Hashvault replies curtly, it doesn't matter. I don't need to tell you that. Go on already. I have to catch a rabbit and get home. Suddenly, a rabbit carcass hits Yhwach in the face. Startled, Yhwach exclaims, what are you doing? Bazz-B grins and says, take it. I don't really hunt to eat. I'm a natural. The reason I hunt is to show off. Then, he tosses a badge with the letter B engraved on it and declares, Yhwach, from today on, you're my sidekick. Don't worry about what the grown-ups tell you. I'll teach you everything you need to know. I'm gonna become the strongest Quincy, Yhwach. Yhwach stands stunned as Bazz-B walks away. Moments later, another figure emerges from the shadows and says coldly, I've been looking for you. You know it's not allowed to go this deep into the forest. You're nothing without me. Isn't that right, my precious Yhwach? The scene transitions back to the present. In the present, Hashvault and Bazz-B are locked in combat. Bazz-B blasts a hole through a nearby wall and sneers, you're calling this place Warvelt now? But this is just Silburn, isn't it? When the hell did the name change? Let me guess. You won't tell me, right? That's what you always used to say. Hashvault, composed as ever, replies, go outside. Continuing our fight here will damage the castle. Frustrated, Bazz-B intensifies his assault, advancing to Burner Finger 3. Flames rage as Hashvault regains his composure and prepares for the next exchange. The scene shifts back to the past. Bazz-B sits in front of a burning castle, flames reflecting in his eyes. He mutters bitterly, 6 months after I met Yhwach, the small castle my family lived in was burned to the ground. That was Yhwach's doing, a monster who ruled over the northern territories, not with a bow and arrow, but with some other mysterious power. They said he'd lived for over 200 years and was the progenitor of the Quincy. But I didn't give a shit about any of that. The flashback continues as young Bazz-B and Yhwach stand together, watching the flames consume everything. I'm gonna kill Yhwach, Bazz-B declares. Yhwach replies softly, should I come too? Bazz-B scoffs, he burned your forest too, didn't he? If you want to sit around in the ashes with your uncle and wonder what to do, then be my guest. Yhwach, his voice heavy with emotion, responds, my uncle died in the fire. Bazz-B says, we made a life for ourselves using some gold we dug out of the charred remains of the castle. We trained as hard as we could to kill Yhwach. Neither of us ever said it out loud, but we had silently agreed to join Yhwach's inner circle and then kill him. The scene transitions to 5 years later. A commander approaches Yhwach and says, a new combat unit, Your Majesty? Forgive me, but there is no longer any place left here worth conquering. Such a unit is unnecessary. Yhwach replies calmly, not here. Our next conquest will be the Soul Society. The commander is visibly shocked. Yhwach continues, Defeating them will not be possible without a new power. The name of this unit will be the Stern Ritter. As the narration moves forward to the 5-year mark, Bazz-B reflects, "For those 5 years, we didn't rest. We hid ourselves away deep in the forest, dedicating ourselves day and night to honing our skills. As always, I was a natural, but you, Graham, he had none of the natural Quincy abilities. Even after 5 years, he couldn't gather spirit particles, and he still couldn't create a single bow. I'd heard of this long ago. A Quincy like you, Graham, was born every few decades. They were considered disabled and culled while still young. But no such Quincy had been born in the last few hundred years, so they had become something of a legend, like an old wives' tale. I started to think that having you, Graham, on my team might not help me in killing Yhwach, but even so, he worked harder than I did, whether it was with the bow or the sword. He was trying to make up for his lack of natural talent, and I just couldn't bring myself to abandon him. I don't know if you, Graham, himself realized that." The narration shifts to an intense moment. Bazz-B recalls, "Then the day came. We see a scene of chaos, a war unfolding, with people shouting and running. The tension in the air is palpable. You, Graham, and Bazz-B make their way toward a crowded area where a soldier is making an announcement. The soldier announces, 'This is a proclamation from Lord Yhwach.' The crowd is confused and whispers among themselves, 'The Yhwach military police? What the hell are they doing here? An order from Yhwach?' The soldier continues, 'Lord Yhwach has decreed the establishment of a new combat unit. It shall be known as the Stern Ritter. This exalted order of might has been created for the purpose of invading the Soul Society.' The crowd is stunned upon hearing the words invading the Soul Society. Murmurs of disbelief ripple through the gathering. The soldier explains further, 'Lord Yhwach believes that, if left alone, the Soul Society will eventually become a threat to us. Of course, there will be a rigorous examination prior to enlistment.' Hashvault turns to Bazz-B and says, 'We saw their banners and followed them here. This is big news, isn't it, Baz?' Bazz-B stands there, excited and smiling. The soldier adds, 'However, should anyone possess a strong desire to fight on behalf of the Quincy—' Before the soldier can finish, Hashvault notices something. Bazz-B interrupts, 'Let's go, you, Graham.' The two step forward, standing in front of the soldier. Hashvault hesitates, trying to stop Bazz-B, but Bazz-B boldly announces, 'I am Bazz-B, and the guy standing next to me is you, Graham. We'd like to enlist in the Stern Ritter.' The crowd erupts in murmurs, shocked by their audacity. 'These kids are fools,' someone whispers. 'They're going to get themselves killed.' Another voice adds, 'Wait, isn't that Bazz-B, the son of the former lord?' Hashvault tries again to stop Bazz-B, but the soldier ignores them and moves on. Bazz-B shouts after him, 'Hey, where are you going? Wait, I said I want to enlist.' The soldier looks back and says coldly, 'The exam will be held at a later date. An announcement will follow. Until then, keep training. Although I doubt the gate will be wide enough to let someone like you through.' Hashvault sighs and says, 'Well, that's Baz for you. Shall we head back for the day?' As the soldier begins to move away, an arrow suddenly crashes near his horse. Bazz-B smirks and shouts, 'I just need to show you my skills, right? Let's do it, Mr. Secret Police. If I win, then I get your position.' The soldier turns back, glaring, and says, 'You mannerless ape. Does it take a duel for you to realize your own lack of power?' Bazz-B smirks again and retorts, 'An ape killed a member of the secret police? That's what your buddies are going to report to Lord Yhwach.' As the tension rises, both Bazz-B and the soldier draw their weapons and prepare to clash. But before Bazz-B can release his arrow, something happens. He freezes, thinking, 'What the hell is this?' A powerful presence fills the air. Bazz-B sees a figure riding toward them on a horse. It's Yhwach. Bazz-B is stunned. This spiritual pressure, he's forcing us all to our knees with just that. He's a damn monster. The soldier immediately bows and says, 'My deepest apologies, Lord Yhwach, for engaging in a personal fight with this low ape.' Yhwach replies calmly, 'As you were. I have come to claim that which I have been searching for, the one who shall become my right hand.' Everyone is stunned. Graham thinks to himself, 'It's him.' He speaks up, I am here. I am the one you have been looking for. I will become your right hand. As Yhwach looks up, he realizes that Yhwach is not standing in front of him. Instead, Yhwach is facing Hashvault. Yhwach speaks with authority. I know your name, Yhwach Hashvault, my other half. Bazz-B turns sharply upon hearing Yhwach's declaration. Hashvault, still processing the words, smiles nervously and says, Are you talking about me? I'm afraid I don't quite understand what you mean. Yhwach cuts him off with an authoritative tone. You need not understand. You are to become my right-hand man and a member of my Sternritter. Hashvault is stunned. The crowd around them is equally shocked. This is what we had always dreamed of, Hashvault thinks, the goal for which we endured years of hard training. And he's just giving it to me? Still in disbelief, Hashvault turns to Bazz-B and asks, What should I do, Baz? Their eyes meet. For a moment, nothing is said. Then Hashvault sees the expression on Bazz-B's face. Bazz-B speaks with an icy edge. We were going to become Yhwach's right-hand men together and then murder him. I had the skill. You had nothing. Even if we couldn't achieve our goal together, if one of us were to do it, it would have been me. He clenches his fists and thinks bitterly. So why is it you, Hashvault? Why? Hashvault, noticing the anger and pain in Bazz-B's eyes, thinks desperately, Don't do this, Baz. Why are you looking at me like that? Why can't you just be happy for me? Yhwach interrupts the moment, his commanding voice cutting through the tension. We return to the castle. Prepare a carriage. I am taking this boy with me. A soldier bows and responds, Yes, Your Majesty. Hashvault hesitates and then says, Excuse me, Your Majesty, but I think there's been some kind of mistake. Yhwach turns back, his gaze piercing. You think, what? A soldier steps forward, visibly irritated. You've got some nerve, boy. His Majesty has granted you the honor of being personally chosen, and you dare to question his judgment. Hashvault, trembling slightly, replies, I barely even have the tiniest bit of skill as a Quincy. I can't even create a bow or arrow. I honestly believe that my friend Baz over there would be far better suited to serve you than someone like me, Your Majesty. The soldier, enraged, rushes toward Hashvault, shouting, Are you still prattling on, boy? Suddenly, Yhwach descends, and his overwhelming aura fills the air, silencing everyone. The sheer weight of his spiritual pressure forces the crowd to their knees. Yhwach steps closer to Hashvault, his voice calm yet powerful. It is just as my eyes have seen. You do not understand the nature of your own power. It is only natural that you cannot create a bow and arrow. Hashvault looks up, confused and shaken. Yhwach's voice grows quieter, but no less commanding as he concludes. You are the same as I, a Quincy with the power to share with others. I have searched long and hard for such a one. After all, a Quincy with the same power as mine has not been born in over 200 years, not since I myself came into the world. Bazz-B recalls the words he had once heard in the past about Quincy, with such abilities not being born for centuries. Yhwach continues, Yhwach Hashvault, you are not like other Quincy. You cannot absorb spirit particles from your surroundings to make their strength your own. Instead, you can only share your strength with others. By allowing others to develop the power I granted them, and then stealing it back once more, I gained my own power. But you cannot even do that, can you? And yet, during the days you spent with this boy, he gestures toward Bazz-B, you must have felt your own powers growing stronger. Did you truly believe that strength was your own? Bazz-B is frozen, his mind racing as Yhwach's words cut deep. You should thank him, Yhwach declares. You were a powerless child, and he turned you into something greater. He turned you into a monster. Bazz-B is stunned to hear this revelation, unable to respond. Yhwach places his hand on Hashvault's shoulder and says, Let's go, Hashvault. I have need of you. Suddenly, Bazz-B cries out in despair. His rage boiling over, he draws his bow and arrow, aiming directly at Yhwach. Die, Yhwach, he shouts as he fires. But before the arrow can reach its target, Hashvault swiftly catches it mid-air and destroys it. The scene shifts back to the present. Once again, Hashvault catches an arrow from Bazz-B with ease. Bazz-B leaps into the air, creating another fire-based attack and launching it toward Hashvault. Hashvault deflects the attack, sending Bazz-B crashing into a nearby wall. Blood spills from Bazz-B's body as he staggers to his feet, his determination undeterred. Hashvault calmly says, "I think that's enough, don't you, Bazz-B? Nothing that benefits His Majesty can come of us fighting one another." Soaked in blood, Bazz-B sneers, "Nothing that benefits His Majesty? Of course not. I didn't come here for His Majesty's benefit. I came here to kill him, remember?" Bazz-B's anger reaches its peak as he advances his attack, unleashing Burner Finger 4. The flames twist and condense into a fiery sword. Suddenly, Bazz-B launches an attack toward Hashvault, but Hashvault effortlessly jumps into the air to dodge it. Bazz-B smirks and taunts him. "What's wrong? Bring it on! Are you gonna run away again? Scared of losing to me?" The scene shifts back to the past, where both Yhwach and Bazz-B are now grown men. Hashvault, maintaining his composure, says firmly, "Enough of this nonsense. Personal duels between Student Legion members are forbidden, punishable by death. No matter how many times you challenge me, I have no intention of fighting you." Nearby, a figure steps forward and speaks. "Has that new recruit been giving you trouble? Must be tough. Perhaps we don't command enough respect as captains of the Student Legion." The voice belongs to Vice Captain Herbert, who smirks and adds, "Perhaps so. I will try to follow your example, Captain Hashvault." Vice Captain Herbert continues, "That new recruit, he's the same monkey from back then, isn't he? As excellent as he is, perhaps I should beat some manners into him." Hashvault retorts coldly, "Personal duels between the Student Legion are punishable by death. Do you plan to die for a man like him?" The Vice Captain responds nonchalantly, "Mere details. If nobody is watching, even His Majesty will have no way of knowing." Hashvault's tone sharpens as he boldly states, "I will be watching." Bazz-B, sitting nearby, reflects to himself, 3 years have passed since Yhwach spirited you away. In those 3 years, I earned a place in the Student Legion, while you became its captain. Or maybe you were appointed captain from the beginning since I wasn't around. At any rate, you kept evading every one of my challenges. Again and again, no matter how many times I tried to face you, you refused to fight me." His frustration boiling over, Bazz-B yells, "Quit running around and face me like a man!" The tension snaps as Hashvault finally moves. In a single, swift motion, Hashvault cuts through Bazz-B's arm and slices the building in half with the force of his attack. Bazz-B stares in shock but quickly grows serious, summoning all his strength. He activates Burner Finger Full and launches a blazing attack toward Hashvault. Unfazed, Hashvault simply cuts through the fiery onslaught with his bare hand. Bloodied and exhausted, Bazz-B collapses to his knees. Hashvault moves to leave, but Bazz-B grabs his uniform with trembling hands, holding himself steady as he sinks further to the ground. Bazz-B, his voice heavy with exhaustion and emotion, mutters, "You beat me, Yhwach. Damn it. Things never quite go how you expect, do they? I always thought I'd be more frustrated when you finally beat me." A sad look crosses Hashvault's face as he turns away from Bazz-B, leaving him lying on the ground. Without a word, Hashvault ascends the stairs, his expression unreadable but heavy with emotion. Behind him, Bazz-B lies on the cold ground, soaked in blood, his strength fading. As he drifts closer to the end, fragments of the past flash through Bazz-B's mind, moments with Yhwach, where they vowed to become the ultimate Quincy, their shared dreams, their unbreakable bond, and their determination to stand at the top. But now, the reality is starkly different. Alone and broken, Bazz-B lies there, waiting for death to claim him. And with this, the battle between Bazz-B and Yhwach Hashvault comes to a tragic end. The chapter begins with Hashvault addressing Uryu Ishida, saying, "So, you have returned, Uryu. You seem to be rather troubled by something." Uryu responds by calling out Hashvault's name and remarking, "You yourself have a rather troubled look on your face." Hashvault replies, "Have you forgotten? At night, His Majesty and I exchange powers. Being able to see the future means constantly carrying a burden. Isn't that right, Uryu Ishida?" Uryu stiffens at these words and asks, "Did you foresee me committing treason?" Hashvault responds, "What makes you say that? I haven't accused you of such a thing. However, I have found several of these devices you've placed throughout Warvelt. Uryu denies it, saying, I have never seen those before. But Hashvault insists, I have seen mechanisms like this before. They break down and scatter spirit particles in a way similar to the one used in the Lydian hand. Uryu Ishida, what were you trying to accomplish by placing these around Warvelt? Uryu stands firm, replying, these are baseless accusations. Baseless? Hashvault challenges, unsheathing his sword. Then prove it to me. He launches an attack at Uryu, saying, prove to me that you are not a traitor. The building begins to collapse as Uryu jumps back, shouting Hashvault's name. In the next moment, from amidst the rubble, Ichigo appears and stands protectively in front of Uryu. Now, both Ichigo and Uryu are facing Hashvault. Hashvault smirks, saying, it seems all the key players have gathered. Ichigo stands with a determined look, his gaze as sharp as Yhwach's. Hashvault continues, how very fortunate, Uryu Ishida. Fate has granted you an opportunity to prove yourself. Show me your loyalty. If you're not a traitor, kill those three immediately to prove it. He gestures towards Orihime, Chad, and Ichigo. He then remarks ominously, I have already foreseen how you will respond, Uryu Ishida. Uryu hesitates, but then unleashes his Quincy powers, firing an arrow toward Ichigo. Ichigo deflects the attack and counters, shouting, what the hell are you doing, Ishida? Fighting us just because he told you to? Is that really what you want? Uryu attacks again, forcing Ichigo to retreat. As Ichigo prepares to respond, Uryu launches another arrow, knocking Ichigo down. Chad quickly catches Ichigo, steadying him. Ichigo demands, why did you join the Quincy side, Uryu? Why are you fighting against us? Uryu responds, and what will you do once you hear my reasons? If I think they're sound, then we're going to fight, and I'll beat some sense into you, Ichigo replies fiercely. And if you don't think they're sound? Uryu presses. Ichigo's gaze hardens. Then I'll beat the hell out of you, no question. Uryu sighs. So no matter what, you're going to beat me. What's wrong with you, Ichigo? What's the matter with you? Ichigo and his group step back as Uryu throws something toward them, saying, this is the key of the sun. Each member of the Sternritter possesses one. He explains, they are metal plates scattered throughout Warvelt, and they're called the gears of the sun. By raising the key in front of them, you can move between these points. He continues, go to the right, and you'll find stairs leading down. Descend 5 levels, and you should reach the gate of the sun, which is set for the invasion of the living world. Use it to return to the material world, all of you. I'll stay here and bring Warvelt crashing to the ground. Ichigo is shocked, hearing this, and Uryu adds, Warvelt is held together by spirit particles. If I activate the chips I've placed throughout Warvelt, it will almost certainly fall apart. Ichigo protests, what are you saying, Uryu? Don't be stupid. Uryu responds, I figured you might say that, which is why I didn't tell you sooner. Ichigo, desperate, shouts, you don't have to do this. All we need to do is take down Yhwach. Uryu shakes his head. You can't. There's no way to defeat him. Ichigo counters, then why do I have to do it? Uryu replies firmly, because I'm the only one who can. The destruction chips are made from a substance called sun regalia, which I inherited from my sensei. Only my spiritual reaction can activate them. Ichigo is stunned, speechless, as Uryu continues. I've given this a lot of thought. There's no other way. Now that you understand, leave quickly, before Hashvault figures it out. Just then, Hashvault stirs, smirking. You really think I wouldn't understand? He rises, taunting. Before I figure it out? Just when would that be? I told you before. I've already foreseen how you will respond, Uryu Ishida, and I know exactly how this will end. As Hashvault enters the battleground, his presence radiates a fierce, intimidating aura. Uryu turns to Ichigo and says, Ichigo, I'll hold him off. Get to the gate of the sun, quickly. Ichigo, frustrated, replies, Damn it, Uryu, what are you up to? Uryu shouts back, Hurry! Go now while you still can! Didn't you hear me? But Hashvault interjects, a calm yet ominous smirk on his face. I told you, Uryu Ishida, I've already seen your answer, and I've already destroyed the gate of the sun that connects to the living world. Uryu's eyes widen in shock. Hashvault continues, his voice resolute. I will put an end to this, Uryu Ishida. I intend to finish this before His Majesty awakens. Ichigo, realizing the gravity of their situation, clenches his fists. Looks like we don't have a choice, Uryu. Uryu recalls Hashvault's words about His Majesty awakening and suddenly understands. Ichigo, he says urgently, did you notice? His eyes, they're the same as Yhwach's. Hashvault and Yhwach share the same power while Yhwach sleeps. Ichigo is taken aback, listening as Uryu continues. That's right. Right now, Yhwach has no power, neither omniscience nor omnipotence. He's vulnerable. Go to him, Ichigo. This might be our only chance. Ichigo hesitates, asking, so you're really going to stay here? Uryu nods firmly. There's no time to argue. Go. I promise you, these won't be my last words. A faint, appreciative smile crosses Ichigo's face as he grasps Uryu's determination. With a final nod, he leaves with his group, making their way toward Yhwach. Once they're gone, Uryu turns back to Hashvault. Not even a slight attempt to pursue them? Are you sure that's wise? Hashvault retorts, his tone dismissive. Stop making me repeat myself. I see everything. They will die. There is no need to chase them. Uryu smirks. I see. But the future isn't set in stone, right? With that, he launches an attack. Hashvault remarks, surprised. You surprise me, Uryu. It's as if you're a different person now. The look on your face, it almost seems hopeful. Uryu responds calmly. Whether I'm truly filled with hope or not doesn't matter. The fact that you're surprised by it means you couldn't foresee it. Hashvault's gaze hardens, unsettled by Uryu's insight. Uryu presses on. Seems you're still far from truly being all-knowing and almighty. With that, Hashvault draws his sword, his face now reflecting a serious determination. Uryu steadies himself, his own resolve unshaken. The two opponents stand locked in a tense silence, both prepared for the imminent clash. Then, with a surge of energy, they lunge at each other, their powers colliding as the intense battle begins. Green shields shimmer as we see Yhwach sitting on his throne, with Ichigo standing before him. Ichigo, seeing Yhwach asleep, unsheathes his sword and swiftly moves to strike. But in an instant, Yhwach's eyes open, and he rises, marking the dawn. He smiles faintly and says, Morning has come. Such a wonderful dream, though nightmarish ones are always the most enjoyable. Yhwach's powers begin to return with the break of dawn, and we shift back to Ichigo, who launches an attack toward Hashvault. Hashvault, however, deflects it effortlessly with his sword, noticing the morning light as well. Ichigo smirks. Guess you didn't expect Yhwach to fail to defeat me before dawn. Hashvault replies calmly, Fail to defeat you? How amusing. My eyes see only a beast, beaten and soaked in its own blood. Ichigo chuckles. Can't say I've been called a beast before. Kind of has a nice ring to it. Hashvault narrows his gaze, continuing, And you're mistaken if you think I aim to finish you by nightfall. My abilities are far better suited to battle than His Majesty's, especially against foolish opponents like you, whose errors demand correction. With this, Hashvault turns his attention to Uryu, launching a fierce attack that leaves Uryu momentarily stunned. Meanwhile, the battle between Ichigo and Yhwach begins in earnest, with Yhwach declaring, Let us do battle, Ichigo. Ichigo grits his teeth, fighting hard against the immense power before him. The scene shifts back to Hashvault, approaching the battered Uryu. Every man walks upon the scales that measure him. Each experience, each encounter, each choice, he places on the scales of right and wrong. These choices, these fragments, together form the shape of the man. That shape becomes his essence. Hashvault intones, his eyes cold and calculating. Uryu lies on the ground, wounded but defiant. Hashvault continues, You too must have made your choices, Ishida Uryu. Yet, I cannot see your shape. The scales you've woven, the choices you've made, they're unclear. So, who are you, Ishida? Is it truly your heart's desire to risk everything for the sake of those shallow humans? Struggling but undeterred, Uryu replies, "Who am I, you ask? How could I possibly answer that? Perhaps it's only by defeating all of you that I'll find that answer." With blood trickling from his wounds, Uryu steadies himself and prepares his next attack, his resolve unwavering. Hashvault smirks slightly, intrigued. "Oh, I see," he murmurs. A coin spins through the air, glinting in the light. A voice chuckles. "I'm surprised this decades-old entry pass still works. Guess you owe your old man one for snagging it back when he was sent into exile." Ishida's father replies, "Seems so. For once, I'm actually grateful for my old man's thieving ways." Ichigo's dad laughs. "Is that any way to talk about your dad? No wonder your own son shows you no respect." We then return to the battleground, where Ishida steadies himself, preparing for his next move. He turns to Hashvault and asks, "May I pose a question of my own?" Hashvault nods slightly, intrigued. Ishida continues, "Why do you ask what kind of man I am? You don't strike me as someone interested in such things. And surely you've realized that my true aim is to buy Ichigo enough time to reach Yhwach. Wouldn't it make more sense for you to defeat me quickly and rush to his side instead of lingering here?" Hashvault replies coolly, "Must I keep repeating myself? I've already seen the outcome. They'll die, regardless of how much time I spend with you here. His Majesty is in no danger." Ishida pauses, studying Hashvault's words. "You've seen it. But hasn't the future changed before, as it did when you were surprised by my actions? The future you witness can shift, can't it?" Hashvault's eyes narrow slightly. "Yes, although I wield His Majesty's gift, I cannot wield it perfectly. But when His Majesty himself looks into the future, that's a different matter entirely. Let me enlighten you on something. The truly terrifying aspect of the Almighty isn't just the ability to see the future." Ishida's eyes widen as he processes Hashvault's words. "What? What do you mean?" Hashvault calmly draws his sword and steps forward. "When our battle concludes, perhaps I'll tell you. But for now, Ishida Uryu, put everything you have on the scales. Let us weigh your resolve upon those shattered scales of yours, scales that can only lead you down a path of no return." In the midst of their brutal clash, Ichigo and Yhwach face off with unyielding intensity. Yhwach finally reveals his true mastery over his power and says, "The Almighty is not merely the power to see the future. It is the power to alter it. Do not be afraid, Ichigo. Prove that my power is unlike any you've faced before. Just as your power only allows you to influence the single moment you perceive, my power allows me to control the multitude of futures I can envision." Yhwach's words cut through Ichigo, who braces himself for the worst. Yhwach continues, "Ichigo, it is true that you've overcome despair many times by altering the future. Do you know why you succeeded? It was because I was not there. Now come, show me that you can change the future yet again. No matter how bright a future you strive to create, I have already foreseen it, and I will shred even those glimmers of hope." Meanwhile, in another part of the battlefield, Ishida is struggling against Hashvault, who activates his shrift, the B for balance. Hashvault's voice is calm yet chilling as he explains, "The balance. By taking the fortune from those who have it and redistributing it to the unfortunate, I maintain equilibrium. This shield, which bears misfortune on my behalf, ensures that you have no chance of victory, Ishida Uryu. If you choose silence in the face of defeat, then so be it." Just as Hashvault is about to land a decisive blow, he hesitates, noticing a change in Ishida's expression. Ishida, standing firm despite his wounds, calls out, "Wait! You seem so certain of my defeat, but wouldn't you like to see the full extent of my power?" Hashvault raises an eyebrow. "A last-minute attempt to stall? If it could turn the tide, you would have used it long ago." Ishida smirks, blood trickling from his injuries, and replies, "You misunderstand. I was waiting for the perfect moment. My shrift is A for antithesis." In an instant, blood erupts from Hashvault's body as if his own wounds have been reversed onto him. Staggering, Hashvault exclaims, "What? What is this?" Ishida calmly explains, Antithesis allows me to select 2 points in time and reverse the outcomes between them. In this case, I chose to reverse the injuries we both sustained. Hashvault, now visibly impressed, steadies himself, realizing the full weight of Ishida's power. I see. That's an extraordinary ability. It's no wonder His Majesty was so interested in you. The power to reverse what has already occurred. It may well be one of the few abilities that could rival the Almighty. Ishida narrows his eyes. So, are you saying that the true nature of the Almighty is even greater than what you implied before? Hashvault smirks, but his gaze grows distant. Take it as you wish, but I can say one thing. I made no mistake in bringing you here. As Ishida realizes that Hashvault was the one stalling for time all along, he begins to flee, only to feel a sharp, sudden pain as Hashvault's blade cuts through him, causing blood to spill out as he collapses. Hashvault approaches, calm but imposing. "Did you really think I would let you escape?" he says, his voice cold. "Your power, antithesis, is impressive, but it can't overcome my balance. I told you, I possess the power to distribute misfortune. The harm you've dealt me, it doesn't affect me. It rebounds onto you greater than before." Lying on the ground, bloodied and shocked, Ishida struggles to comprehend the immense power of Hashvault's balance. Hashvault stands over him, almost disappointed, but with a hint of respect. "Despite it all, you refuse to surrender. You are intelligent, Ishida. You must realize that you're no match for either myself or His Majesty." Raising his sword, Hashvault prepares for a final blow. "Earlier, I mentioned I couldn't see your shape, but I take that back. You're very much like those humans whose foolishness defies all logic." As he swings his sword down, he stops short, thrusting it into the ground beside Ishida instead. Ishida lies there, breathless and battered, but alive. Hashvault's eyes narrow. "So you can still move." Ishida, with a faint, pained smile, murmurs, "You say I'm similar to Ichigo and the others?" He pauses, catching his breath. "All this time I've stayed calm, calculated, balancing every choice on those scales you talk about. But Ichigo's a fool. When he wants to save someone, he just does it. Inoue's a fool. Chad is a fool. Renji's a fool too. If to you, I appear like one of those fools, that makes me happy." Hashvault's expression is unreadable, but there's a slight hint of something, perhaps curiosity or disbelief. "Happy? I didn't ask about your feelings. I'm telling you I see no reason for you to value them so highly. If companions are meant to elevate us, then your allegiance should be to His Majesty, the one who granted you new power. It is for him that you should be willing to risk everything." But Ishida rises, steadying himself, his determination undiminished. "These scales measure all decisions, right? Yes, I made my decision to stand with them, but that's not about right or wrong, benefits or scales. It's because they are my friends." Hashvault's composure falters for a brief moment, as though Ishida's words have touched a buried part of himself. His gaze hardens, and a shadow of despair crosses his face. "I see now. You are unwilling to sacrifice anything for this cause, to give up anything. You would dare defy His Majesty, defy destiny itself?" In a surge of fury, Hashvault raises his voice. "Then if you will not give up anything else, Ishida, you must at least give up your life. Would you sacrifice it for them?" As Hashvault raises his sword, prepared to end Ishida's life, a strange blue energy begins to surge from his body. Both he and Ishida look on in shock as the energy intensifies and starts to pull away from Hashvault, draining him. Across the battlefield, similar blue energy erupts from all of Yhwach's followers, leaving them weakened and collapsing to the ground. It becomes clear that this is Yhwach's final move. He has chosen to absorb the power of all his children, leaving them powerless. Yhwach's voice echoes ominously. "At this stage, none of you are of any use to me. Lie there and watch as I destroy both Soul Society and the human world." Hashvault falls back to the ground, drained and barely able to move. Ishida, bloodied but still standing, sits near him. Hashvault notices Ishida's gaze, and with a weary smirk says, "What's that look for? Do you think I'm bitter that His Majesty took my power? You misunderstand. I am proud. proud that he deemed me worthy enough to take my strength, that it was I alone he could use. Ishida is taken aback by Hashvault's words, watching him in silence as he tries to understand. Hashvault, his breathing labored, calls to him, "Wait, before you leave, transfer your vows to me." Ishida stares, stunned. "What are you saying?" Hashvault responds firmly, "What's the matter? Do you pity me? Moments ago you fought with the intent to kill me. Why hesitate now? I told you to place all you have on the scales, because if you make your decisions with doubt in your heart, you'll only come to regret them. Go now, Ishida. Save your friends." Ishida, though injured, rises to his feet, his eyes heavy with the weight of Hashvault's words. Hashvault looks into the distance, his final thoughts echoing in his mind. Even if it changes nothing in the end, to choose one's own path, to walk it by choice, that is what matters. I have no regrets. Finally, Hashvault closes his eyes for the last time, the letter B etched on his fallen sword, symbolizing the balance he once maintained. The long, fierce battle between Ishida and Hashvault finally comes to an end. The chapter begins, and we see Ichigo standing in front of Yhwach. Yhwach is sitting on his throne, and as Ichigo steps in and sees that he is sleeping, Ichigo takes out his sword and cuts him in half. But suddenly, Yhwach realizes that it was just a dream he was having. He gets up and says, "Morning has come. Such a wonderful dream. The nightmare ones are always the most enjoyable." Then we see that as the Yhwach is sitting there, suddenly a door opens, and this time, Ichigo enters the main hall. Yhwach says, "It is good to see you. You have kept me waiting for some time, my child of darkness." As he sees Ichigo standing in front of him, Yhwach says, "You draw not your blade. How very foolhardy, is what I would ordinarily say, my child. It would appear you can hardly be called defenseless." Yhwach sees an enormous amount of spiritual energy bursting out of Ichigo's body. Yhwach remarks, "Your coursing spiritual pressure is too strong. It is as if I can see it take shape. You have grown strong. Ah, but no, this is merely the power you have always truly held. Now strike me. Whether you attack from the right or from the left, I look forward to finding out." Ichigo says, "What are you talking about? I know you can already see exactly how I am going to attack." Yhwach responds, "I will not use my power. I wish to savor this rare opportunity to speak with my son." Ichigo says, "I already have a father and it isn't you." Yhwach says, "Speak of Kurosaki? He isn't a father to you, yes, but not your true father. You have already heard the tale of your power's origins, have you not?" Ichigo gets enraged and says, "Sure I have. What about it? You are not my father. You are a man who killed one of my parents." As Ichigo shouts, Yhwach replies, "You speak of your mother? Surely you are more of a man than that." Ichigo, enraged, finally draws out his sword. In the next moment he launches an attack, using his power directly against the Yhwach. But before he can hurt Yhwach, Yhwach suddenly stops the attack by creating a black shield with his energy. Then he tries to attack Ichigo, but Ichigo also creates a shield and defends himself. Ichigo gets pushed back but regains his posture once again. Ichigo gets back and takes out his second sword, cursing the black energy of Yhwach. Then he turns directly toward the Yhwach and attacks him once again, but Yhwach stops and defends his attack once more. Yhwach says, "What point is there in grieving her death? She died because it was her time. Her life served its purpose, to give birth to you and then become my nourishment. Why does this displease you? What greater happiness could she possibly have hoped for?" This time, Ichigo falls into despair. Yhwach rises from his throne and kicks Ichigo back into the wall. Yhwach says, "We have talked enough. I enjoyed our little chat." Then, we see the true power of the Yhwach. He gets up from his throne and says, "Now, let us do better, Ichigo." Yhwach now looks terrifying as he rises, with a gigantic eye appearing all over his body, surrounded by a black aura. Ichigo is severely injured but pushes himself to attack Yhwach once again. Yhwach remarks, "Such a reckless attack. Did you bring that girl along for no reason? Has your hatred clouded your judgment? Have a little patience. With this, Yhwach kicks Ichigo directly in the face and says, "What is it that truly drives you? You will ultimately be consumed by me. There is no need to hasten your inevitable death. How much time and how great a miracle do you think I have spent to create you? Be patient. Do not throw away your own life, your body, your power. I am not yours alone, Ichigo." We see Yhwach's black energy completely surround Ichigo. Yhwach shouts, "I want to see every last bit of strength you possess before you die, Ichigo." Ichigo is now bloodied and sitting there hopelessly. Yhwach once again attacks Ichigo, sending him flying into a building. As Ichigo tries to attack Yhwach again, Orihime stops him and asks him to calm down. Ichigo looks back at her, but in the next moment, he rushes toward Yhwach once again. Yhwach says, "I cannot understand it. Why do you rush to your own death?" Ichigo ignores him, jumps high into the air and tries to strike. Yhwach continues, "Are you afraid to show me your power? Are you afraid that if you do, I will take it from you? But Ichigo, is this really how you want things to go? If you die here, the human world and soul society will both be destroyed. I will put an end to them myself. Are you really going to accept that, Ichigo?" He then throws Ichigo back, and Ichigo crashes to the ground once again. Orihime tries to heal him with her powers. Yhwach says, "You see, Orihime is telling you to reconsider. She is telling you to heal your wounds and fight. Answer me, Ichigo. Answer the voice of the powerless, for the sake of the weak ones, whose very breath will be stolen away if you fall." As Yhwach speaks, Ichigo launches another attack, but Yhwach deflects every strike and throws him back each time. Ichigo attacks once more and shouts, "Stand, fight, and die." Yhwach retaliates with a powerful strike, launching Ichigo back again. Ichigo regains his composure, but as Yhwach's next attack is about to hit him, he shouts, "Orihime!" Orihime quickly creates a shield and defends Ichigo. Ichigo says, "Thanks for that, Orihime. I'm glad you stopped me." Orihime replies, "I'm glad I could keep up with your movement at all. I only just managed to grab the edge of your clothing, but you still stopped for me. When you looked back at me, those weren't the eyes of someone fighting recklessly. I thought you must be doing this for a reason." Ichigo responds, "Yeah, there was someone I wanted to wake up by drenching them in overwhelming spiritual pressure." Orihime realizes that Ichigo's blade is now turning white. As she watches, a yellow light begins to appear around Ichigo. Yhwach looks pleased and says, "Oh, I see. So that's what you were playing at." Finally, Ichigo transforms into the form of Salvation, the Horn of Salvation. The chapter begins with Ichigo in his Hollow of Salvation form. Yhwach asks, "That hollow-like appearance, is this the form of your hollow merged with your own power?" Ichigo explains, "In the past, whenever I used too much of my Shinigami or hollow power, these guys would come out. To be honest, since they're part of my own power, I'd like to bring them out whenever I want, but I'm not used to controlling them yet, so I use your power as a trigger." Yhwach smiles slightly at Ichigo's explanation, and we see Ichigo charges towards Yhwach. As he moves closer, a massive surge of energy explodes outward, destroying everything in its path. Yhwach, impressed, says, "Such magnificent power, Ichigo." Deciding to escalate the fight, Yhwach reaches for his sword, but before he can draw it and make a move, Ichigo, in a flash, is already upon him. He grabs Yhwach's sword with one hand, while with his other hand, he throws his own blade into the air and attempts to strike Yhwach. The blow causes massive destruction, leveling the surrounding buildings. However, to no one's surprise, Yhwach catches Ichigo's sword mid-swing. He taunts, "Do you really think that's enough to cut me down, Ichigo?" In the next moment, Yhwach throws Ichigo back. Ichigo quickly recovers and prepares to unleash a Getsuga Tensho. Yhwach, unfazed, remarks, "It's always the same attack. Such weak moves will never reach me." But then, to Yhwach's surprise, he realizes something is different. Ichigo smirks and reveals, "This isn't just a Getsuga Tensho. It's mixed with a Gran Rei Tero." With this devastating combination attack, Ichigo slashes through Yhwach, delivering a powerful blow. Ichigo, stunned by Yhwach's relentless power, defiantly says, "What's this about despair? I know all about it. I've faced it again and again, and every time, I've conquered it." With this declaration, Ichigo grips his swords tightly and shouts, "Bankai!" An immense burst of energy erupts from him. Without hesitation, he unleashes Tensa Zangetsu, but to his surprise, as he swings his blade, he realizes that his sword is broken. Shocked, he wonders, why is my Tensa Zangetsu broken? When he looks down, he sees Yhwach holding a piece of his shattered blade. Ichigo, stunned, thinks, what is this? What just happened? Did he snap it? No, I didn't feel him move at all. Yhwach smiles confidently and says, no need to look so horrified, Ichigo. I simply showed my respect for your power. Your new Tensa Zangetsu is indeed a dangerous Bankai, which is why I took the precaution of breaking it. In the future, you don't understand my words yet, but you have no time to figure them out. Suddenly, Yhwach breaks one of Ichigo's horns, and before Ichigo can react, Yhwach throws the broken piece at him. Instinctively, Ichigo bats it away with his remaining sword, but in the next moment, he realizes Yhwach is standing right behind him. Yhwach attacks, sending Ichigo flying into the ground. Before Ichigo can recover, Yhwach launches another devastating blow, causing blood to pour from Ichigo's body as he's thrown into a building. Yhwach, floating in the air, prepares to strike again, but a shield suddenly appears and stops his attack. It's Orihime's power. Ichigo, struggling to stand, sees Orihime and shouts her name, but before he can say more, Yhwach strikes him down again, and more blood spills from Ichigo's body. Orihime, shocked, wonders, how could he hit Ichigo if I blocked his attack? Yhwach taunts them, saying, did it never occur to you how simply seeing the future could allow me to place traps wherever I wanted? You must already have some idea of the answer. He continues, yes, that's right. The future can be changed. That's what you told me, isn't it? And indeed, the Almighty is not merely the power to see the future. It is the power to alter it. This revelation leaves Ichigo stunned, and Yhwach presses on. Come now, Ichigo. Succumb to despair. It is true that you have conquered despair many times by changing the future. But do you know why you succeeded? It's because I wasn't there. Show me now. Can you still change the future when I'm here? Ichigo is filled with confusion and frustration, unable to comprehend Yhwach's overwhelming power. Yhwach raises his sword high and says, no matter what wondrous future you try to create, I have already seen it, and I will slice it apart. Yhwach strikes again, sending Ichigo crashing into the ground. He grabs Ichigo by the head and pulls him up, sneering, have you given up already, Ichigo? That's not like you. Ichigo, now covered in blood and overwhelmed with despair, thinks, my sword is useless. My shield is useless. Is this the end? Yhwach, seeing the hopelessness on Ichigo's face, throws him aside and says, so this is how it ends. How disappointing. No, perhaps I should say, you've entertained me enough. It's time for you to return the power I gave you. With that, Yhwach grabs Ichigo's face and begins to extract his powers. Blue lines of energy ripple through the air as Ichigo feels the Quincy and hollow powers inside him start to vanish. Everything turns white as he feels his strength draining away. Yhwach, absorbing Ichigo's power, laughs triumphantly as black energy erupts into the sky. A black portal appears behind Yhwach, and he says, farewell, Ichigo. Neither you nor my children are of any further use to me. Lie there and watch as I destroy both the Soul Society and the human world. As Yhwach walks away, he notices Renji and Rukia approaching. He smirks and says, you're certainly resilient to still stand before me, but with the wounds you bear, you can barely move. Still, if you wish to pursue me, feel free. I will honor that spirit by granting you a glorious death. I will wait until you reach your moment of greatest happiness, and then I will take your lives. With that, Yhwach steps through the portal, leaving Renji, Rukia, and a broken Ichigo behind. Rukia, shaken, asks, what kind of power is that? The power to rewrite the future. How can anyone stand against such an ability? Even the power of rejection can't erase something that's already been broken in all possible futures. Renji helps Ichigo to his feet and says, let's move. Rukia, trying to stop him, asks, what are you planning to do? We need a plan before we face him again. Renji chuckles and replies, got any bright ideas on how to beat a monster like that? Rukia hesitates and says, no, but... Before anyone can say more, someone suddenly stabs Ichigo from behind. Renji and Ichigo both turn in shock, only to see that it's Tsukishima. Ichigo, confused, asks, what are you doing here? What's your purpose? Tsukishima smirks and replies, an excellent question. I have no reason to ally myself with you, Ichigo. I'm only here because Ginjo instructed me to be. Ichigo stares in disbelief, but Tsukishima continues, you're so naive. I never said I would be your ally. I'm just repaying the debt I owe you. Tsukishima turns to Orihime and says, use your Soten Kishun on his brain again. Even if the future has been overwritten, as long as there's a past where it wasn't broken, you can reject that reality. Orihime does as instructed, and we see Ichigo's mind restored to its original state. Tsukishima smirks and says, "That settles our debt, Ichigo." Finally, Ichigo stands up, takes his sword back, and prepares for what's to come. As Yhwach arrives in the Soul Society, he says, "It is unexpected to think that you would encounter me in Soul Society once more." Then we see the legendary panel where Aizen is already waiting for Yhwach to come, and he welcomes Yhwach to his Soul Society. Yhwach laughs, realizing he has found another worthy opponent. Meanwhile, Ichigo and Renji are escaping and trying to reach Yhwach. Ichigo falls, and Renji questions if he's all right, helping him get back up. Ichigo asks Renji why he didn't stay with Inoue and Rukia, saying he shouldn't have come with him. In response, Renji strikes Ichigo's head and punches him, saying, "I'm only going to say this because you're the only one here to hear it. All this time, for as long as I can remember, decades at least, Rukia and I were separated by a distance so great we couldn't even glimpse each other. But the one who brought us back together was you. That's why I've decided, whenever you find yourself unable to go on, I'll take you onward myself, carry you if I have to. That's what I've done up to now, and I'll keep doing it forever, until the day you die. So don't ever tell me I should have stayed behind again, because this story isn't over." Ichigo smiles. Back in the Soul Society, we see black energy emerging and white smoke spreading as Yhwach enters. He breaks Aizen's chair, removing all the seals. Aizen says, "I have to admit, I thought you'd settle everything up there without setting foot down here. But this shows you had more trouble with Kurosaki Ichigo than I had foreseen." Yhwach replies, "Don't try to project your own troubles onto me. It was you who was defeated by Ichigo, not I." Aizen continues, "At any rate, I must thank you for destroying that troublesome chair. As a result, I am able to stand in your way." Yhwach says, "You mean to fight me for the sake of the Soul Society? I can't imagine how that would benefit you." Aizen replies, "This is not about benefit. My only purpose has always been to crush all who seek to control me." In the next scene, Ichigo and Renji leap behind Yhwach, trying to strike him. Yhwach dodges their attack and says, "Ichigo, Renji, you certainly made it here quickly, though of course I saw that you would meet me here, that your sword would be restored, and that it would once more be broken." Ichigo is stunned as his sword is broken again. Yhwach comments, "I thought I had broken it more cleanly than that. You truly do have the most accursed luck, Ichigo." Black energy flows out, crushing everything in its path. Yhwach says, "You're barely hanging on, Ichigo. I can scarcely bear to watch. Why didn't you have Inoue heal you before coming after me? Because she was wounded? Or perhaps you thought you wouldn't make it in time if you wasted time healing. No matter when you arrive, you cannot hope to change a thing." As Yhwach continues talking, Renji attacks him. Yhwach responds, "The same goes for Renji Abarai." Renji ignores him, unleashing his Bankai, Suzabimaru, and leaps into the air, trying to attack. But unsurprisingly, his Bankai is cut down by Yhwach. "Your Bankai is meaningless against me. Still, you don't understand. All of your Bankai have already been crushed by me in the future. So when you face me, I will crush you with my own hands so you can understand what's happened." Suddenly, Aizen leaps and attacks Yhwach. Yhwach shouts, "Aizen!" remarking on how amusing it is that divine forces unite against a common enemy when faced with defeat. Aizen ignores Yhwach's warning and launches Haruna 99, Goryuten Metsu, and a purple dragon emerges, destroying the area. Aizen runs towards Yhwach to land a hit, but Yhwach says, "Have you not noticed that Aizen's sword has already been broken?" At that moment, Yhwach hits Aizen directly in the stomach, and blood spills out as he is sent flying. Yhwach says, "Don't bother these two," as he cuts Ichigo's hand. Ichigo tries to counter with his sword, but Yhwach catches it, saying, "I'm disappointed." He crushes the sword into pieces. "I applaud you for assessing the situation and instantly choosing to fight alongside Aizen's forces. However, Kyoka Suigetsu cannot deceive me. It was Renji I sent flying with my first move, and the one on my side with the next was you, Ichigo. I see it all." With these words, Yhwach breaks Ichigo's sword and shouts, "It's over for you, Ichigo." In the next moment, Yhwach creates a hole in Ichigo's stomach, cuts his hand, and blood spills from Ichigo's body. Yhwach grabs Ichigo and says, "Farewell. Your resistance was pleasant to behold. As thanks, I will allow you to perish alongside the Soul Society." Just as Yhwach prepares to deliver the final blow, He hears words echoing, and it turns out it wasn't Ichigo in front of him. It was Aizen, using Kyoka Suigetsu to trick Yhwach. Aizen says, "Do you see me as Kurosaki Ichigo? Do you?" Yhwach is stunned, and in the next moment, the real Ichigo stabs Yhwach from behind. The stab doesn't have an immediate effect, but then Ichigo unleashes Getsuga Tensho. As the attack rips through Yhwach, his body starts to disintegrate. Yhwach tries to retaliate, but his body is slowly disappearing. Aizen says, "Not bad, Ichigo. I'm impressed that you adjusted to Kyoka Suigetsu so quickly." Ichigo, standing over Yhwach's fading form, says he felt a strange uneasiness as he was heading to the Soul Society. It was the same feeling he had when Aizen placed everyone under his power. Aizen, impressed by Ichigo's observation, says, "You are quite right. I released Kyoka Suigetsu before you all arrived here, and I was able to confirm that my power could even alter the Almighty's vision of the future. All that happened was the existence of you, whom Kyoka Suigetsu would not affect. To think that my neglecting to show you my release of power would prove useful in such a fashion, Kurosaki Ichigo." As Aizen is about to say more, suddenly, a blade pierces through his body, cutting him down. Ichigo shouts Aizen's name, and we see Yhwach rising again. Yhwach remarks, "Aizen's attack has been reactivated, whether due to his overconfidence or because he has simply reached his limit." He then turns to Ichigo and says, "I hope you do not believe you have taken my life with an attack like that. My power allows me to change the future. Even my own death can be overwritten." Ichigo, determined, tries to attack Yhwach again, but Yhwach kicks Ichigo's hand, sending his sword flying. Ichigo attempts to fight without his sword, but Yhwach grabs him with his black aura and says, "It's over. Both the human world and the Soul Society will lose their form and become one before my power." As Yhwach is trying to control Ichigo, suddenly, an arrow pierces through his body. He looks confused, and from a distance, we see that it was Ishida who fired the arrow. Ishida explains, "Let me tell you what Uryu told me. The silver that appears from the Auswählen is called the Silver of Stillness. By mixing with the blood of the one who activated the Auswählen, it interferes with all of the user's abilities. For a single instant, it eliminates them completely." He then shouts, "Now's your chance, Kurosaki Ichigo." Yhwach, still unfazed, says, "So what? What did you hope to achieve by altering my power for just a mere instant?" Ishida doubts if they can make it in time, but Ichigo grabs his sword and launches a powerful blow toward Yhwach. Yhwach tries to break Ichigo's sword, but to his surprise, the sword was not broken. It was concealed within a stone shell. Ichigo's real sword emerges, and in the next moment, the blade approaches Yhwach. Yhwach says, "So what I saw at that moment was a glimpse of the future through my own eyes. I thought it was a dream you were showing me." At that moment, Hashvault's dead body is revealed, and in the next instant, Ichigo cuts through Yhwach's body. With this, Yhwach is completely destroyed, bringing the legendary battle between Yhwach, Ichigo, and Aizen to an end. The chapter begins with Shunsui sitting quietly at the grave of Ukitake. Taking a sip from his drink, he remarks, "Looks like we might finally finish clearing everything up. Apparently, there's just one last district that needs its tiles laid, and then that'll be everything done for the moment. 10 years. It took quite some time, but I guess it's possible to recover from a massive disaster like that if you put your mind to it." A voice interrupts him, calling out, "Captain Commander, we're almost out of time. Please hurry." Shunsui sighs, standing up slowly. "Dear me, I don't think I'll ever get used to the bustle that comes with this job. Makes me appreciate just how incredible old Yamaji really was." He takes one last look at Ukitake's grave and says softly, "Well then, I'll see you around, Ukitake." As Shunsui leaves, a faint spiritual pressure rises from the ground near the grave, subtle yet unmistakable. Its origin remains unknown. The scene shifts to Captain Mayuri lab. Mayuri observes his monitors and says, "Looks like West 55th District is finally going to be completed. They certainly took their time. Now I'll finally be able to extend my concealed network across all of the Soul Society." He rises and announces, "Now then, I should go conduct a field survey. Come along." His assistant, Nemuri 8, cheerfully responds, "Right away, Mayuri-sama." Mayuri sighs in exasperation, muttering, "You don't have to be so loud. Honestly, I do wonder why you had to turn out like this." Nemuri, with a cute tone, replies, I'm very sorry, Mayuri-sama. The scene shifts again to Captain Kenpachi Zaraki. He's scowling as a group of subordinates eagerly congratulate him. Good work out there, Captain Zaraki, one of them says. Excellent work, Captain, another chimes in. Kenpachi glares at them, frustrated. Shut it, you louts. I ain't done with the work yet. It's barely past midday. The group freezes in shock and immediately stammers. Sorry, Captain. Ikaku steps forward and asks, By the way, Captain, isn't the ceremony at the 1st Division quarters? Are you sure this is the right way? Kenpachi grumbles. What are you on about? It's the 13th Division in charge, so it's at their quarters, right? Ikaku hesitates. No, Captain. It's at the 1st Division quarters. Another subordinate interjects. I wouldn't know. I'm only the 3rd seat. You're supposed to keep track of these things. Kenpachi grumbles. Now listen here, Ikaku. The only reason I used to get lost all the time was because of Yachiru. Now that she's not around, I always know exactly where I'm going. Without waiting for a response, Kenpachi runs off in a random direction, shouting, If we're clear, then let's get moving, and hurry it up, you two. Meanwhile, Shinji notices them from a distance and sighs. That's the 11th Division. Where the heck do they think they're off to now? Hinamori, standing beside him, suggests, Perhaps they're a little lost. Shinji scoffs. Folks who don't know where they're going don't usually move that fast. Hinamori, concerned, says, I'll go and intercept them. Shinji waves her off dismissively. Seriously, don't bother. We don't want to get caught up with them and end up late ourselves. Hinamori looks at him questioningly, but before she can speak, Shinji adds, There ain't no buts about it. They're grown-ups. Let them take care of themselves. That's the captain's orders. Hinamori frowns. Captain Hirako, you only ever use the captain's orders for pointless things, don't you? Shinji smirks and replies, I guess that shows the difference in priorities. I wouldn't call it pointless. I use it when I feel like it. The scene shifts to Captain Toshiro and Captain Iba. Toshiro remarks, Straight from the training grounds? You certainly work hard, Captain Iba. Noticing Toshiro, Iba replies modestly, Well, you know, I still don't feel like I'm really captain material. If I were to skip out on training, I don't think I'd be able to hold my head high in this job. Toshiro smiles and says, I see. That's certainly a fine attitude. Perhaps that kind of spirit is exactly what one needs to truly be a captain. I can think of a few people who could benefit from following your example. With a thoughtful smile, Toshiro adds, After all, it means the Soul Society has been peaceful for a whole decade, and I'd say today's ceremony will be a fine way to wrap up that decade of peace. The scene shifts to Soifon, who is shouting, They're late! Where have they been? Kenpachi casually steps forward, unfazed. We just went on a run around the whole of Siraitai. I'd say we made it here pretty quick, all things considered. Soifon snaps back. Then let me ask you, why exactly did you feel the need to run around all of Siraitai on such an important day? Aizen steps in calmly, trying to diffuse the tension. Why don't we all just settle down and head inside, shall we? A little girl nearby comments, You could try to be a bit more forceful with them. You are a captain too, remember? But Aizen simply sweats nervously, unable to respond. Inside, the ceremony begins. Nanao, standing at the front, announces, Now that everyone is present, we will begin the inauguration ceremony for the newest captain of the Gotei 13. The scene pans to reveal all the current captains standing in 2 rows, with the head captain standing solemnly at the center. Nanao continues, The new captain may enter. Renji smirks and says, Wipe that strained look off your face already. Don't worry, if you stress out so much that you trip and twist your ankle, I'll give you a piggyback. Rukia glares at him and snaps, Shut up, Renji! The doors open, and Kuchiki Rukia enters, wearing the uniform of a captain. She walks with poise and dignity, now officially the captain of the 13th Division. The scene shifts to the laboratory where Akon says, Where did the captain go? It's the big day for the new captain's inauguration. Another scientist replies, I think he went to inspect the reconstruction district. Akon is visibly shocked. What? On such an important day? The other scientist shrugs and says, Hey, You're his left hand. If you don't know, why should I? Akon sighs in frustration. What a pain. I guess I'll have to go fetch him then. As Akon checks the instruments, he notices something unusual. His expression shifts to concern as he says, "Wait a second. There's a strange reading coming up on the instrument. It looks very similar to Yhwach's spiritual pressure from 10 years ago." The scene shifts to Kazui Kurosaki, the son of Ichigo, as he sneaks into a warehouse. Suddenly, Mayuri bursts in, shouting, "What the hell do you think you're doing over there, brat? How did you even get in here?" She sighs and mutters, "This kid sure knows how to pull a stunt." The scene transitions to Captain Byakuya Kuchiki, walking alongside a subordinate who reports, "The spiritual pressure reading suspected to be a remnant of Yhwach's power is coming from West Brick Street 55. It's near the final restoration area, right beside the Deviant 13 building." Suddenly, Captain Soifon appears and says, "I assigned this task to you because it seems the captain of Deviant 13 already left after the ceremony." Byakuya replies calmly, "That is fine. Rukia and the others are enjoying a well-earned break. There's no need to contact them. I will handle this." As they approach Captain Mayuri Kurotsuchi, Mayuri greets them with a smirk. "How strange. I don't recall sharing any information with you people." Soifon responds sharply, "Don't underestimate the information network of the covert ops." Byakuya remarks, "If you're here, I presume that the indicators or the information were accurate." Mayuri chuckles. "Dear me, it won't be long before you see firsthand just how accurate it was." Then we see the remnant of Yhwach's power floating ominously in the air, its presence radiating a dark, foreboding energy. The scene shifts to Rukia and Renji standing outside a house. They ring the doorbell, and moments later, Ichigo opens the door with a smile. Rukia greets him, "Hello, Ichigo." Then, with a teasing smile, she adds, "Your place seems as unpopular as ever." Ichigo smirks and replies, "That's a good thing for a clinic to be empty, isn't it? Now quit skulking around and come inside. You're the last ones to arrive." As they step inside, Rukia announces, "I'm going to make some popcorn and other snacks so the posse can enjoy." While Rukia starts preparing, they notice a live broadcast on the computer screen showing Chad. Renji points at it and says, "Man, isn't Chad incredible? He's gone and become the most famous out of all of us." The scene shifts to a rooftop where someone is standing alone. From inside the house, voices can be heard. "Where is Dr. Ishida?" Someone replies, "He's taking an extended lunch break up on the roof. From what I heard, he wanted to take the day off today but couldn't make it work. So he's taking a quick break now to watch this show he really wanted to watch with his friend." Another voice adds, "Well, isn't that sweet?" Then Ichigo calls out to Orihime that show is about to start, so she must come. Inside the house, Ichigo questions, "Where's Kazui?" Orihime reply comes, "I think he's back upstairs now. From what Tsubaki-kun was saying, I think he dropped in on Iori-chan and the others just now." Suddenly, Ichigo remembers something and turns to Rukia and Renji. "Come to think of it, weren't you guys saying you were going to bring your kids too?" Rukia replies, "Oh yes, she's finally become an official apprentice with the Gote. We were able to get a special pass just for the off-season. Come on in now." Rukia looks around for her daughter but then notices she's not there. She frowns and says to Ichigo, "Well, it seems she's disappeared." Ichigo, concerned, asks, "What?" Rukia reassures him, "Worry not, she's a Shinigami. No human would be able to harm her." Ichigo sighs and mutters, "You kids who like to pick fights with random humans, go and find her already." The scene shifts to Kazui Kurosaki, who finds himself standing before the remnants of Yhwach's power, ominously swirling around the ruins of the tower. As those remnants begin to attack him, several captains suddenly appear, shouting for Kazui to step back. However, they are too late. Before anyone can act, Kazui calmly reaches out, and with just the pressure of his hand, the remnants dissipate into nothingness. Everyone is left stunned. Captain Mayuri exclaims, "What is this? The remnant of Yhwach's power? It simply vanished?" The scene transitions to Aizen, who remains imprisoned in the depths of the Soul Society. He senses the change and speaks aloud, The last trace of Yhwach's power has finally disappeared. Reflecting on the past, Aizen remembers the moment Ichigo defeated Yhwach and muses, "The path has now closed, Ichigo. The path to a world without fear. The human world, soul society, Hueco Mundo, they were meant to belong together as one. Life and death should have mingled as one. But now, that path exists no longer. All thanks to you, Ichigo. How disappointing. A true life where death and life lose their form cannot exist. All living things will continue to live in fear of death for eternity. You walked a road that could have created a world devoid of fear. But in a world without fear, men could not confront death and seek hope. Certainly, they could keep walking forward by merely living. But that would be very different from walking onward while conquering their fears. And that is why we give the act of walking onward a special name. We call it courage. The scene shifts back to Kazui. As he looks around, he notices someone approaching and asks, "Who's there?" From the shadows emerges a small, confident girl. Pointing her sword, she introduces herself. "My name is Ichika Abarai, Shinigami in training." Kazui smiles and replies, "I'm Kazui Kurosaki, and I'm a Shinigami too." Ichika is shocked to hear this, and with this, the tale of Kurosaki Ichigo finally comes to an end. However, this is not the end of Bleach. There's still the Hell Chapter one-shot manga, where enemies trapped in hell make their return. But we'll cover that another time. Since it's not yet complete, who knows? Maybe Tight Kubo will continue it, or maybe he won't. For now, if you'd like me to cover any other anime or iconic moments, let me know in the comments section. Don't forget to check out other videos on my channel, and as always, thanks for watching.